Mine's retard. I love it.
Mine too.
Okay. Okay. With that said, with that in place, is everyone ready? Everyone good to go? If so,
Mhm.
we'll start this. We'll start this shindig.
Yeah. Hi, non-fawn. I love you.
Okay. 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 I've clicked all the buttons. I've dialed all the knobs. I think we are live. Welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues, both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. And gang, we got a bit of a show for you tonight. Hasan has been banned for about 24 hours from Twitch for mishandling terrorist propaganda. And with the tragic and senseless violence and murder of the 2 embassy workers, once again, we're here to talk about
Violence.
free speech, its limitations, if any, and stochastic terrorism. And we've got a great set of guests to do that. I'm going to give them each a chance to kind of introduce themselves, give a little, a brief intro on their thoughts, and then we'll get into it, gang.
I love you
And
too,
remember,
Jeffrey.
if you enjoy my content, as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're on YouTube, if you're on Kick or Twitch. Click the follow button, and you'll always see me. With that said, let's give the mic first to first time person on my show, Misfit Patriot. Welcome. Thanks for coming, and tell people a little bit about who you are, why they should listen to you, and what are your thoughts on all this. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Misfit Patriot. I talk about I do political commentary with a focus on calling out the extremism on both sides. So I'm not necessarily well liked by my side or some of the people here because I'm just completely unfiltered and uncensored. I was on a debate with Wick, and the person that he was with was just nonstop talking. So I made this thing called the Pisco timer. I don't think we're gonna need that today, but yeah, that's me.
Welcome to the show, and yeah, it was a raucous one, and thank you for agreeing to kind of show up. We'll
Mhm.
see. Um, notsoErudite, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is notsoErudite. You can find me everywhere under that name. Some of you might know me from Bridget's podcast. I'm back, baby. I guess. I haven't really streamed much in the last like 3 years, so 2 years. So I'm trying to be a little bit more considered in that. And thanks for having me, Wick.
Always a pleasure. It's nice to have you back. We've missed you. So
Back
welcome to the
home.
show, and we'll get into it. I'm sure. It'll be a fun discussion. Last but maybe least, I'm not sure. Soy Phil, go ahead.
Hey,
Tell people
buddy.
who you are, what you do, and
Yeah, I'm the Soy Pill.
all
I make
that.
video essays. Sometimes I stream and call congressmen slurs. I am here to talk about stochastic terrorism. So yeah, I'm excited to do that.
Okay, I guess I'll start with I guess what's most recent in the I guess the debate sphere. Hassan's ban. Do you think Hasan should have been banned for talking about the terrorist manifesto, or the terrorist manifesto that he read on stream, the shooters, to be clear? Do you think he should have been banned for that? Why or why not? Do you think that was a righteous ban? What do we think? Go
Was
ahead.
he banned or was he temporarily suspended?
It's temporarily
24 hours,
suspended
yeah.
On
for
Twitch,
24
that's
hours.
what that means. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not banned. I mean, sure, it would be lovely if we lived in a world where there was no
Do you think he
rules
should have
on
been
any.
banned?
I don't know exact. I know that he read something. I don't know exactly what he did, but I know that every platform has these community guidelines, and people get temporarily suspended all the time. I don't like it either. However, the way you're framing it makes it sound like he didn't do anything wrong. He was just exercising his First Amendment right, and the government took away his voice. It's not what happened. Apparently, he was temporarily suspended. He might have broke the rules. He might not have. I don't know exactly what he said or why, but he didn't get banned, so let's not say that he got banned if he didn't get banned. He got temporarily suspended. He took it. He got a 1 day timeout. X has given me 1 week timeouts because I said to Nikki Haley, "I hope you get bed bugs." Right? It was stupid, but it's just how it's how the internet works.
Other thoughts? What do we think?
I mean, of all the things that Hasan could be banned for, I don't think this one was particularly bad. I say this also in ignorance. I haven't seen the clip of on him reading said manifesto. I did read said manifesto, which is honestly, other than the fact that it is, used to justify horrible murders, like the prose and what it is itself is not particularly egregious. It's not calling for like other people to, well, I guess it's arguable, but it's mostly just like, hey, here's the description of what I think is happening, and then overall I think this justifies what I went and did, which compared to a lot of manifestos I've read is not nearly so bad. I don't think it's that bad, but depending on how he handled that on stream, maybe he should have been banned for that, but given the other stuff he's done, it seems like not one of the more egregious things to be banned for, which is interesting.
Any thoughts, Kyla?
Yeah, so I think we need to be specific about. So I'm so tired of like taking Hassan's narrative of what happened and be like, that's why. So like Hasan says he got banned for reading the terrorist manifesto. If anyone's actually watched the clips of him reading the terrorist manifesto, it's possible that it was for reading it. It's more likely the fact that he does like a lot of that, like, you know, when Nick Fuentes will be like, look, Adolf Hitler was a great painter, right? It was a lot of that behavior, right? So he never said it's okay to go and kill Jews, but he said, well, this guy isn't really a neo-Nazi. And, you know, the narrative around people, you know, this manifesto writer, he's pretty reasonable here. He's look, he's such a good writer. His prose is great. And using that to somewhat, I'm sorry, I'm trying to like fix this bright light going on.
Okay.
And people are using this to basically, he's using this to fundamentally like wash out the extremism within the actual manifesto and like the thinker. And he keeps insisting, for example, that this guy doesn't hate all Jews. You know, he's just really upset about Gaza. But then he makes this weird comparison to Luigi Mangione. And even in his own chat, they're like, they can't track it because his own chat is being like, yeah, he's different than Luigi because Luigi targeted the guy who actually affects healthcare, and then this guy targeted people who don't actually affect the war. And then like, oh, wait. And I think in the middle of that, he realized that he's basically justifying anti-Semitism. And then he's like, yeah,
Just like
anyways. So
terrorism.
Can I
Yeah,
actually want to
and
push
so-
back on that, Kyle? I mean, like, was based on what I read of I don't know this guy's whole motives. I just read the manifesto. It did not seem particularly anti-Semitic. It seemed like a totality of all the things that I would say most of the left wing thinks now, which is Israel's actions are abhorrent. There's peaceful things are being tried. None of this is working. Now, correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know. Did he target these two individuals specifically?
No, he went in to kill more than just these two people. His gun ended up jamming. He shot these two just because they were the first two that he saw.
Right, which is why like
shot,
it's so ridiculous, right? Because it's like
he shot them, and then his the girl that he shot, I can't remember her name, Sarah, I think. He shot her once. She was crawling away, and he went over her body and shot her in the back a second time. So it was execution style.
Yeah.
And his gun jammed. This is per the reports that the police put out. So for all we know, he was going to kill 15, 20 more people.
Mass shooting as much as he could,
Yeah, but it's just his gun jam.
Here's the reason why this is anti-Semitic. I would agree that if you read the manifesto, it's never explicitly anti-Semitic. It's always baked into anti-Zionist talking points. The issue is that what he did is he went to a Jewish embassy and just shot random Jews. That's what he did.
Yes.
Which means he's not really targeting anyone related to the Gaza situation. In fact, if he looked into it, he would have known that the meeting that was happening was fundamentally about trying to broker peace and find a ceasefire. And so if anything, he's targeting maybe the worst Jews to target, but he's targeting them because they're Jews. That's why he's targeting them.
Well, that's what's interesting. Is it? Well, I think you've kind of baked in two positions there, which I guess I don't agree with. Which is, if you look at the manifesto and you see that he is vehemently anti-Israel, obviously, it's like, look, Israel's actions are awful. I think Israel's actions are awful. But then to say that this is the same as anti-Semitism, as a Jew and a anti-Semitic Jew at that, I would say that this is like specifically like him targeting the perpetrators of what he perceives to be one of the worst evils of today. And if he had gone into a synagogue, I think you'd have a much more strong case for that, because that's like, these people are completely unrelated. But the fact that he went to the embassy of the country that he thinks is doing that, like, I still don't. I'm not saying it's impossible that he is just anti-Semitic. It just doesn't really strike me as that.
Am I wrong? And perhaps I'm mistaken, but I don't think it was the embassy. I think the embassy
No, it was an
workers were at
event.
an event outside a Jewish
It
museum.
was
Sure,
the. It
sorry,
was
excuse me, the
literally.
museum. Yes.
I
It
don't think
was
it
a.
was at the embassy.
It was a Jewish youth event. It was he was going there to kill Jews. I mean, let's not play this game of Zionism versus Jews, right? Because 80 to 95% of all Jews are Zionists, right? So if you hate 80 to 90% of a people group, you hate the people group, all right? And there's people that are like, I'm Jewish and I'm anti-Zionist. Okay, are you a religious Jew? Are you an ethnic Jew? Because there's a big fucking difference, right?
Sure, sure.
Religious Jews, they say that the numbers are upwards of 95%, like actual religious Jews. With actual ethnic Jews and Israelis, the number's very high. And then there's this polling and demographic of young Jews, right? It's basically secular Jews who are only ethnically Jewish, and those are the high number of them are becoming more and more anti-Zionist, which is it's really conflating two different things, right? There's Jews and there's Jews, right?
Right.
Like there's people who just have a Jewish mother, Jewish family, Jewish
Yeah,
ethnicity,
that's me.
and then and yeah, that's probably you. Now, this guy went to a youth Jewish event, and he didn't target. I don't think that he was going up to people like, "Are you Jewish?" and then pulling the trigger. He was going there because it was a Jewish event. Period. Right? There's no justifying it away. And his manifesto, which was talking about how you need to actually enact violence in order to enact peace, is bullshit. It's
Right, right.
terrorism.
No,
It's
it is 100% terrorism, but I want to be
no, there
super clear
doesn't
here.
need to.
The reason I'm
Yeah.
even pushing back a little bit is because I've seen the big difference between someone who like ostensibly is like, hey, every Jew is bad, like these like super far right, like Nick Fuentes' types. And I'm not saying that
Mhm.
I think that there's clearly a distinction between I am against, like, tell me if this is crazy. If I'm just a average American, I'm not bought into all this internet crazy politics, and someone comes up to me and says, hey, look, the Israeli state is doing this in Gaza, regardless of whether or not you think it's the worst thing in the world, doesn't matter. They're just like, hey, this is what's happening. This is how many people died, and this is how many children died. And then I say, wow, I really don't like the state of Israel. Would you consider that anti-Semitic? Because I think there is baked into that a lot of anti-Semitic people, but I don't think that inherently is anti-Semitic. And I think a lot of people will criticize the state of Israel for its actions, and because it is the Jewish state, they get to hide behind that label of anti-Semitism, which I don't think is always the case. Not to say that there's not anti-Semitism painted at these people, because there absolutely is. If you're just, I don't like what Israel's doing, I don't think that is inherently anti-Semitic. This guy might have been.
Unfortunately, that's
Yeah,
not.
before you answer,
Unfortunately,
before you
that's. Go
respond,
ahead.
just real quick before you respond, I just want to remind people like, um, this isn't the core of the discussion and the debate. I mean, obviously it relates to it,
Well,
but I just want to just kind of
we
after you
can move
guys
on.
have this back and forth, I want to try to get us back
Let
a
me just do
little bit on track.
one quick
Yeah,
response, then we can
yeah,
move
yeah,
on
yeah.
because I know you really want to talk about the free speech restrictions on people. So here's the thing. There's this there's this word game that's going on between people who are like they're like, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm anti-Zionist. I just don't like what Israel's doing. I just. And it's you may be right that there are some people who feel this way. So there's some people who are like, I don't like government corruption, I'm anti-war, I'm a libertarian, this, that, and the other. The vast majority of people that have adopted the cause. So if you have a big tent filled with a bunch of people who hate Jews and you're in the tent, but you're going, I don't hate Jews, right? It's like, hey, but you're going to be lumped in. It's the same thing that we do with everything else with any type of tribe. It's like, oh, all MAGA's racist or all this or all that. And you go, but I'm not. Oh, but all these other people are. You're viewed by the company you keep. That's all I'm trying to say. And we can move on to the free speech thing.
Well, can I
do
ask
you,
one
do you,
real
hold
quick
on,
clarified question, Rick?
real quick,
Actually,
because
or
I
maybe
want to
you
get
can.
on this too, right? Okay, fine, go first.
Well, yeah, I guess my to just take this to the absurd extreme, like, does that mean that because like anti-Semites will always hate Israel, right? Because they hate Jews and it's a Jewish state. Does that mean that no matter what Israel would ever do, like even if they nuked Gaza or if they, were like committing like literal Holocaust level, like I am putting all of these guys into camp, we're just gunning them down, 10,000 a day, like would criticizing that no matter what be anti-Semitic? Like, are they
No.
immune from criticism? Is what I'm asking.
No. I've criticized them before. I'm a theological Zionist, so I only support the Jewish people. I don't support a state or a country of Israel. However, I have also looked at this evidence. I've followed people like John Spencer, military experts who are covering this war, and the way Israel is handling it. It's not this genocide that everyone keeps saying. Now, you can have that opinion, and that's fine, and you can criticize Israel's actions, like allowing certain things to happen. I mean, I don't want to get into the specifics because we'll go down a rabbit hole, but I think that there's corruption in every government. I think that Israel is a government, and I think there's corruption in it, right? Sure. That being said, they are no more or less corrupt than our own government. They are no more or less corrupt than many other governments around the world. The hyperfixation on Israel's response to a terrorist attack where they raped and murdered 1,200 people, it's just bullshit. Right, we had the World War II, like the Allies with the Royal Air Force bombing Hamburg, Germany, 9,000 tons on Hamburg, 250,000 displaced, 40,000 dead, 40 more thousand injured. Nobody called it a genocide because it's a fucking war. So just be honest and say what's happening is Israel is fighting a war that you don't like the way they're fighting it, and you want to criticize the way they're fighting it. Perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable. Please do it. Just don't wrap it in this "I'm not anti-Semitic" shit, because 95% of the people that you're hanging out that are agreeing with you, those people are. And again, that's not your fault. But that's not your fault. But you're getting
sure. But it does seem like you're granting it. Oh yeah, Kyla, we can't hear you.
Yeah, you're muted.
As a Gentile non-Jew, I just wanted to quickly weigh in. I think saying that he wasn't anti-Semitic when he went to not Israeli embassy, they happen to be embassy workers, but he went to a museum.
Capital Jewish Museum. Yeah, Capital Jewish Museum.
Jewish museum, right? He was going there to target Jews. In fact, he was going there to target Jews in the same way that Hamas does. He was targeting young Jews specifically, which is one of the main groups that Hamas will often try to target because it's symbolic of killing the future of Israel. It's very, very important to Hamas, specifically to killing young Jews. So to say that this isn't anti-Semitic, but to go back to Hasan, to zoom back out, whether
Thank you, tinfoil freak. I don't know what that means.
Or not, doesn't really matter. Sorry, I was just waiting for you to finish talking to your chat. Doesn't really matter. What matters here is how he covered it, right? Is he bad for reading a manifesto? I think you and I would probably agree, no. I don't care if people read people's manifestos. What matters is the way that they engage with the manifesto afterwards. And I would say that the way that he engaged with the manifesto, while not nearly as bad as half the shit that he's done in the past, was, I would say, basically dismissing and normalizing and basically sane washing a terrorist who killed Jews.
How responsible, if at all, do you think that people like Hasan are for what happened in last week with the killings? I know that I've seen some people suggest that this was a form of stochastic terrorism, that the people like Hasan, not just Hasan, but many other pro-Palestinian kind of messaging, globalize the intifada, bring the war home, et cetera, acted as sort of a stochastic, terroristic kind of thing to make it more likely that someone would go out and do this kind of violence. Cards on the table here. I don't agree with that. I don't believe that. I don't think that's true. But I wanted to hear what you guys think on that, and I want to have a discussion about that. What do we think?
I think if you read the manifesto itself, I mean, Hasan is part of a narrative that is...
It's like Hamas wrote it. Like the manifesto looks like Hamas wrote it, though.
I mean, considering how extreme Hamas is, I don't think it's particular. Like I said, I think 90% of it is very much like I am a disaffected person with the system. And I see the Luigi Mangione comparisons, because it's like you take this thing where you've got a very difficult position, you don't see a lot of movement. And by the way, this is going to sound a little bit like what Hasan's doing, where it almost sounds like I'm justifying it. The problem is you can take this very frustrating position, see that nothing's really working and nothing's changing for the better, but then your jump from that to, okay, now I have to go kill innocent people is the kind of insane part, which is why this guy's insane, instead of, hey, how can I affect change? How can I make sure people change their minds? What are the several thousand steps in between being very frustrated and disaffected with the state of politics and committing a mass shooting can I take? And these people never do that. They just say, okay, let me go murder someone. But the thing is, I don't think Hasan really contributes to the way this is done insofar as it's more than anyone else is saying. Because if you look at the manifesto, it's, hey, politicians say that they're angry about it, but they're not doing anything about it. Violence is still being committed. Israel is clearly bragging about the fact that America's not, holding them back. And all of that stuff is empirically true. Now, whether or not you think it's justified, I know Misfit thinks like, hey, like analyze wise, this is like, you know, a low civilian to terrorist death ratio or whatever, or they're doing the best they can given the circumstances. Regardless of that, the circumstances are incredibly frustrating for people who want it to stop, and I think that it seems to be what inspired him to do this, insofar as like he's like, well, this is the only thing that could do it, or like Aaron Bushnell's like, well, I have to set myself on fire or else nothing's going to change, even though clearly both of these things are not going to stop what happened. I don't think the actual material conditions that led to the frustration are Hasan's fault. He's just talking about it, although he is spreading the word at the very least.
Was he? I didn't see the clip of him reading the manifesto. If he read the manifesto word for word and said, "I'm just reporting this manifesto," then obviously that wouldn't be stochastic terrorism, right?
Can I give you guys a quote from that actually?
Sure.
This is from the New York Post.
From the
Who is
manifesto, because when we're talking about stochastic terrorism, Hasan and the embassy killings.
no, we're
or
talking about
whatever,
Hasan. A Hasan
Yeah.
quote from his stream where he was
Okay.
reading the manifesto.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah,
I was
give us
curious.
that.
If we want to talk about stochastic terrorism, though, we have to talk about his language before the killing, right? Like,
Go ahead.
not
Yeah.
how
Yeah,
he
yeah.
responded afterwards, right? So, like, when it comes to stochastic terrorism, I don't really see a grounds on legally how you do anything about it, right? And it's like an impossible thing to quantify. Of like, okay, well, is Hasan doing stochastic terrorism because he's talking really, really, really grossly, like disgustingly about Israelis? It's definitely mean and bad. What about Noah Sampson, who basically walks you all the way up, talking about how we have the means to basically go and kill like Raytheon owners and like military industrial complex workers, right? Is that stochastic terrorism? That's probably more in its ilk. But again, even if Noah Sampson's viewer goes out and kills a Raytheon worker and cites Noah Sampson, I don't know legally on what grounds we go, you're at fault, and now we can like criminally or civilly charge you.
Well,
I
it's
don't
calls
know
to
how
violence in the same way you violate the First Amendment. If someone
not.
says like, no,
It's not.
so sorry, so like, say someone says something like, wow, the Second Amendment people should do something about that. That is clearly like, I am implying that someone with a gun should go and do something with a gun to this person. I think that is criminally chargeable, is it not?
I'm pretty sure in these cases where you walk all the way up to the line but don't cross it, you don't
Right,
cross
if
the
you don't
ground in
cross
order
the
to
line.
do
And
this.
obviously, I think Hasan is, well, didn't he post
He's
a...
well behind the line.
Has he not posted a picture of the gun used to kill Shinzo Abe in response to a senator saying something mean?
He has. The issue is how do you criminally and civilly persecute this to say he's now at fault if somebody went and killed that person? That's really tough to do. I genuinely, I don't know how you do
I
it.
think the main issue is a lot of people, not just Hasan, there's a ton of people on the internet who try to toe this line and they know exactly what they're doing. Like we mentioned earlier, you know, the from the river to the sea, right? It's like there's a lot of people that are like, what, like that's just free speech. And I'm a free speech absolutist, but one thing I don't endorse is, you know, openly supporting terrorism and calling for genocide. I don't think it's free speech. So when you say from the river to the sea, you're talking about from the river to the sea, all Jews die, right? And if you press people on that, they'll be like, no, that's not what it means. Okay, what does it mean? They don't have an answer because it's what it means.
Do you think that all of them think that though? I don't truly. I
don't
know a
think
lot
it-
of these people chanting it, and either
Right,
they
so
don't
when-
understand that, or they don't really think they want to
The
genocide
people-
Israelis. So
the people in Nazi Germany that were just like repeating what Hitler was saying, right? That's stochastic terrorism. It's like, you know, when you indoctrinate a group of people, when you have a massive following, like Hitler back in the day, or any Twitch streamer now, when you say something, your followers just repeat it. They don't need to know what it means. They don't need to actually know that they're repeating this call for genocide. It takes effect, and it's this mass movement. And it's very dangerous. So yeah, there is something to be said about the responsibility that you have as a streamer and a platform, to make sure that if you are saying something like, if you go, hey guys, everyone's chanting this from the river to the sea thing, and you know that actually really is basically calling for genocide. Maybe we should change the language on this. But they don't. They do it on purpose. One person does it on purpose. And to this, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. To this lovely lady's point about How do
Kyla.
you how do you prosecute it? That's the tricky part. They know that it's very difficult to prove that in court, because how do you prove intent? They're just going to play dumb. It's the same thing like when people dox other people. They dox them and they go, "Oh, this is public information. I don't really want anybody getting hurt." Bullshit. There's
Well,
some people who know what they're doing, and then their followers don't know what they're doing. But that's the problem.
Misfit, I want to be clear. I'm not playing dumb here. I've never chanted
No,
that.
yeah.
However, I have heard many people who do chant it who I know do not have the genocidal intent of it. And when you make the Hitler comparison, I think it's very different, because the explicit Hitler language is, hey, I want to exterminate, eradicate the Jews. I think if someone's saying, death to Israelis, I think that's a much, much different thing than what can be interpreted and has been explained to me as, I want the Palestinian people to be free from Gaza and be free to operate inside of Israel all the way to the sea, right? So I can see that as a non-genocidal chant, and a lot of people can, unfortunately. I think that's a lot less explicit than something that would otherwise be very clearly stochastic terrorism, even if you think that no matter what, it's genocidal.
So in order for it has to be so clear that it's like, just, like, I want to kill the Jews. You can't play word games, or else it doesn't mean it. That's the problem, right? These people know exactly what they're doing, and they're mincing words, and
So
they're
how do you want to
towing the line.
prosecute them? How do
No,
you
no,
want
no.
to
That's what I'm
prosecute
saying. I don't want to prosecute it, right? I do
Okay.
not. I don't think that you should.
Do
I don't think
you,
us.
Soipel, do you want to prosecute stochastic terrorism? Like if you say
If
Hasan
it's
is a
very
stochastic terrorist,
obvious, I mean, if he was, I don't think that anything he has done is so blatantly legally obvious that he could be prosecuted for it. However, I
what about
know.
I
Vosh
mean,
when he was Fed posting?
One more time.
Vosh when he was Fed posting? I don't know if you remember that.
I'm not familiar with the. Could you tell me what happened? Well, just to be clear, let me give an example of like what I said would be probably prosecutable is if someone says, "Wow, someone should go out and do something about this guy," and then someone does go out and try to commit violence against him. I think that's probably a call to violence that I would think would be not under the First Amendment. Like, it
No,
depends on how it's
no.
okay.
Never-
Let's say it's more explicit, Wick. Let's say,
Hold on, let me push
hey,
you, let me
the
push you.
world would be better
No,
if
no,
this guy was dead, and someone should make it happen. You know?
Let Kyla
let's
push it.
use
Let
your
Kyla-
example. Let's
Yeah.
use your example.
Okay.
Right. And then let's push it. Okay. So it
Sure.
goes to court. First of all, you have to prove A, that person was watching that person,
Yes.
and B, that they were watching that person when that person said that. Right?
Yes, right. So like this is one of those
Okay,
things
so
where
what if they
remember.
weren't watching it?
Oh, well,
What if
then
it
you
was a
can't
Hasan?
prosecute them. Exactly, right. So there would
this
be
is
a
what I think.
large
Stochastic
burden of
terrorism-
proof, but the thing is, especially
Exactly.
like remember.
You gotta let. You
Oh,
gotta let
sorry.
Kyla
Go ahead.
finish her point.
She cut out for a second. I thought she was done. Go ahead.
So yeah, you said like in this case, like you wouldn't be able to prosecute them. And so I'm saying like every single person who's not just like a complete dunce is going to walk that line. Like every single content creator, even Noah Sampson, is explicitly
Exactly.
walking that line. They walk all the way up
Sure,
to it.
right.
They give you a little wink and a nod, but they will never say anything that quite goes over the line, except for like the extreme cases. But the extreme cases are never going to be large content creators. It's not going to be Nick Fuentes, right?
Well,
It's not
you-
going to be Hasan. It's not going to be Noah Sampson. So
But do you
I
see?
don't
But you see,
think-
there is a
Peters just
line,
said-
right? Like we agreed. Like had they to tread over that line, there's
Yes.
probably something obvious there, and that's why I don't think any of these
Yeah.
people have necessarily crossed it.
Let me
Even
give
like
you a
these-
recent example.
We
I'll
already
give you an
have
example.
this. Well,
Give
the
me a
issue, what I'm
recent-
saying is like you're not talking about stochastic terrorism. You're talking about incitement. We already have this. We already talk about
Okay,
it. There's
fair
already
enough.
a law for it. We all agree that you can't like point at a bunch of like brown people and be like, guys, we should go fucking neck them, right?
Yeah.
Everyone agrees that that is bad and wrong to do, and all the versions of directing people to do violence. The issue with stochastic terrorism is you do everything up into the point of directing violence, but you never do. You never do say we should go get them, right? They'll
So
just
let me
be
gi-
like,
Can I give you a recent example that just happened a couple days ago? This is Stu Peters. I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he's straight up anti-Jew. He's like espousing Hitler. He's not saying I'm anti-Zionist. He's not towing the line, and he's been calling for a final solution.
Okay.
All right. So this was the day before, or the day of, I think, actually, the shooting at the Jewish Museum in D.C. He posted, solutions are great, final solutions are better. Somebody calls him out and goes, see, this type of language is exactly why these two people just got killed. And he responds with, show me where I called for a genocide. And then Community Notes is like, final solution means genocide, dumbass. But as long as he's not saying, I think you should go out and kill every Jew, and he only says final solution, where do you draw this line that people keep on walking up to? Because that's what we're trying to get to.
No, I get
And-
that. And maybe just to clarify, I think the reason that I am using what Kyla, you've already pointed out, is already kind of the legal standard, is that, yes, it is very ambiguous up until that point where you're clearly inciting violence. And I think there's so much ambiguity up until that point that I wouldn't be comfortable prosecuting people just because it's
okay.
vague.
So then what we're talking about isn't stochastic terrorism, because if we're saying like, yeah, stochastic terrorism is all the stuff before and incitement, and the only part of it, stochastic terrorism, that's bad is incitement, then we don't really have a conversation, because
Well,
everyone agrees with
it's
it,
not about
right? Like
what's
nobody would be
bad.
like, yeah, incitement's cool.
If we
No,
want to
the
talk
question
about the
here,
rhetoric being bad,
hold on, let me
yeah.
finish here. Let me finish here. The actual conversation is, what is stochastic terrorism? Is it bad? And is there anything that can be done about it legally, morally, socially? That's the conversation that we have
Okay,
to have. So
sure.
maybe we need to back up and just define stochastic terrorism, because the moment something moves to incitement, I would say that's no longer a stochastic terrorism. That's incitement for violence. That's hate speech.
And
We have
yeah,
that
and
covered.
keep
We have
in
a legal
mind
word.
just to guide this, right? You can be against something and not think it should be prosecutable, right? So I can say,
Yeah.
well, hey, I understand that there are reasons why we can't codify this into law, where we say, okay, now we can prosecute you for XYZ, right?
Mhm.
But you can say, hey, when I see it, I can condemn it. I can platforms can ban it, perhaps, or we can say in my community we don't want this kind of shit, and if you do this kind of shit, you're gonna be kicked out. We could do all sorts of things other than prosecution. Let me read a couple of these super chats, and we'll get right into it, because I think that was a good reset point. So let's just read a couple of these real quick. Okay. $2 from Cameron502 say he targeted them because they left a Jewish museum. True. $10 for Feder Mephitis says, I just got here. This better not suck. My girlfriend was going to give me an exfoliation treatment with a cheese grater and then a massage with kerosene, but here I am. Thank you for the $10, I guess. Appreciate you, buddy. $10 from Doobie to say, if from the river to the sea is genocidal, when pro-Palestinian activists say it, what does Misfit think it means in the Likud party charter? Is it genocidal there too? If not, why? Do you want
All
to
right.
respond to that?
Fucking yeah, it's a whataboutism argument. Look, it just means what it means, man. I fucking hate whataboutism. It's the dumbest, laziest fucking way to do any type of argument. But what about? But what about doesn't mean shit to me. Focus on what I said. From the river to the sea is a call for genocide. Period. It's what it is. Whether or not people mean it that way, whether people don't understand that they're saying it that way, it's what it fucking means. Right? So I don't want to hear bullshit about the Likud party. I don't want to hear bullshit about, but what about MAGA saying fucking the Muslim ban? I don't care. Focus
Well,
on the fucking argument.
Misfit, maybe I can give a little credence to them. Like, do you remember the whole like OK symbol thing that was going around like 10 years ago or
Yeah.
whatever? So like
Stupid.
obviously this has been okay for decades, right? And everyone knew it meant to that. And then 4chan did the troll where they're like, hey, what if we make this a white power symbol? And then actual white supremacists use it to mean white power. And to a degree, with some people who do this do mean it to mean white power. Some people are doing it that way. Obviously, majority of people don't. However, just because it is that, and it does not, diminish its meaning as an OK symbol, but it also doesn't mean that those people using it to mean white power don't mean white power. I think the problem is if you could show me somehow that most of the people that do say from the river to the sea do have genocidal intent, I think that would be much more compelling than just, well, even if the original meaning of that was genocidal intent, my experience with the people chanting this is not that they want a genocide, and that's why it's frustrating, because maybe they're co-opting it, maybe they're taking it back. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like most of these people are saying it.
The original meaning behind the Nazi flag was a symbol of peace. When you change the meaning of something, when enough people adopt something, it becomes that thing.
Exactly.
Right?
No,
And
I
I
agree
think
100%. Yeah.
so. I think what you're asking me is, have enough people adopted it to mean a genocidal intent? Yeah, I think they have, but maybe you're not seeing it. But
That
I'm pretty
I'm not. Yes.
sure. I'm pretty sure that
Can that
the
work in reverse?
it can. Yeah, it
Can
can.
work in reverse? You can take something that's a horrible thing and then make it to something benign?
I
Like
believe so.
queer.
I mean, yeah, like yeah, thank you. Good example. Like a retard. We love that word, right? Like so fucking no, I'm just joking. But what I mean is, if you look at the people who are protesting on the college campuses calling for this genocide, a lot of them were not these peaceful protesters that were just fucking looking for they were literally writing death to Jews. They were chanting death to Jews. There were people in New York City the day after October 7th. There was one guy that was holding up his phone and it had a swastika on it. And I think that if this is where people lose me on the pro-Palestinian side. I can have immense respect for pro-Palestinian people if they do what I do and call it their own side. Right? If I see people calling out the stuff that I'm talking about, I have immense respect for them. Same thing about the Palestinians, right? I say, you know how the Palestinians can get my respect? And a lot of people's overthrow their fucking government. You know, Hamas is their de facto government. There's millions of them and only 40,000 Hamas fighters. And the reason they don't overthrow their own government is because they don't want to. There's a lot of support for Hamas in that region. I'm not saying all of them. There are peaceful Palestinians. There are Christian Palestinians. There are great Palestinians. I'm not saying that every single Palestinian is a terrorist. However, there isn't enough of them calling out the bad actors in their own, I guess you could call it country. It's not really a country, region, right? You got to be able to take self accountability and use it as the reason why people should support you, right? If you aren't calling out the bad shit on your own side, you don't deserve people's respect.
But
Period.
also, I mean, even the ones who
I-
are still getting bombed, so
I
it
do gotta
seems like a
give
kind
it
of a
to
collective
Brad, right? I
punishment
don't
sort
wanna
of
get
thing,
stuck
right?
on
Like,
justice
yeah,
when
I
I'm
can we
don't.
move
I
back
don't
to
know if the
stochastic
point of this
terrorism?
conversation is Israel Palestine. I think there's a lot of nuance being missed on every single side, and it's also not the point of the conversation. Going
Sure,
back
no,
to
I
stochastic
agree.
terrorism for the purpose of
Louis, we're
like
not even
not
fighting.
because I think something that's happened already in this conversation is what I hate the most. It's like the Heidegger chatter, right? We keep on using this word stochastic terrorism, but we aren't actually all agreeing on even what we mean by it. So we could just keep talking past each other. So I can
Do you have
offer
a
a
do you have an
definition.
yes,
if
please?
people-
Actually, can we define it?
Sure. Yeah. So I essentially hold on. Let me pull up my Obsidian. I wrote one. Situations where public figures use mass media to demonize a person or group, increasing the likelihood that someone committed a violent act against them. Importantly, the speaker does not issue direct commands, allowing for plausible deniability. So I define it as it's saying everything you can to
Up
incite
until the
violence
direct, yeah.
up until the line of inciting violence. You never cross that line. Once you've crossed that line, we call it hate speech. We have a word for that.
And they're
That's what
stochastic
I'm
because
calling.
they're probable but individually unpredictable is what I have here. So that tracks. That's exactly what it means.
So my issue
Okay.
then, the reason
Okay,
I
so we all
got
agree with
confused,
this.
yeah, I agree with the definition. The issue, Kyla, that we were getting, or I was getting, like, using a more obvious, like, illegal thing at the beginning is there's so many of these cases where even if I don't agree with what they're saying, I think people might feel justified in going and committing violence because of what they hear, right? So we look at both of these cases, the Luigi case and the, what's his name, Elias, right? And it's like, both of these people, I think, had a very strong foundation in reality, which is there is a very fucked up system that is doing things to millions of people that I think is unjust, right? And if I am someone who reports on the healthcare system of America and says, I don't like this is unjust, I could arguably say that people like CEOs are killing, tens of thousands of people in America every day. I don't think anything I have said right now should be considered stochastic terrorism, because I think that is a justifiable, defensible thing to say. And I've seen similar things on Hasan's side. Now, this is not including the having terrorists on, saying I love Hezbollah. Like these are just I am describing the reality of the situation as I see it. And the problem is if you can then say, well, he didn't directly call to violence there, because he didn't. But someone reasonable who's a little more crazy might go and do something violent because of that. I don't think that's something we should shame. I don't want to. I would be more scared not of the violence that may come from the craziest parts of people seeing that reality, but rather from the pushback on the free speech of people just saying, hey, I think this is a bad situation. I'm much more scared of that.
Yeah, you essentially are saying like fundamentally I believe in the like right of free speech versus like the consequences of really nasty speech that we hate, right? I think all of us probably here agree that like Nick Fuentes sucks. Like I don't think any of us like him. But at the same
He
time,
tried to pipe on my house once. Do you guys know this?
He
No,
tried to pipe
I
up.
was on a panel with him with Stardust, and back when he'd go on Stardust's panels, and he's like, "I'm gonna pipe bomb your house," and I was like, "Okay."
So here, actually, you know what? This is a good point. If I could jump in for one quick second, because Nick Fuentes, I think he's pretty smart. I hate giving him credit, but he really is. In the way that he uses his language, he creates a cult-like following. Like he literally said, everybody that's, and I know that he's just going to say he's joking, and I think that this does tie into stochastic terrorism, where they try to make this like, oh, I was just kidding, but Nick Fuentes is like, I will kill, rape, and die for Nick Fuentes, and he goes, put your hand up and say, I will kill, rape, and die for Nick Fuentes, and he's going to go, hey, I was joking. But just about a week and a half ago, Sarah Fields was threatened, had a death threat against her from one of Nick Fuentes' followers, and he said, he literally was in a space with me after he was saying that he was going to rape and murder her. He said, I will kill, rape, and die for Nick Fuentes, and he was not joking. This kid had mental issues. So what is the line? How do you define? Like, so we already went over what stochastic terrorism is. It's coming up to the line, not crossing it, and then hoping somebody will do something that you're just giving the winky wink nod nod to. And this is why I brought up the from the river to the sea thing, because I believe it is a form of stochastic terrorism. I believe that when the left was saying that, you know, all the white people, all the rich people are so evil, and the healthcare CEOs are killing people, and this, that, and the other, I believe that's what inspired Luigi Mangione. How do you draw the line? You don't, right? Because what we have to do is we have to protect free speech at all costs. And the way to combat bad speech is with your own speech, and you have to start drowning out the own voices, which is why I'm saying that the way that I think this should be fixed is in-house. I think that when you see something on your own side and you don't call it out, you're complicit in it. That's why a lot of people on the right hate me, because I'm calling out what I call the woke right. I'm calling out these Nick Fuentes types, Stu Peters. I'm calling these people out, and we vote the same way. But why am I calling them out? Because it's wrong. It's wrong what they're doing. I'm trying to make my voice bigger than theirs.
No, I agree with that completely. Oh, go ahead if you want to say. I was already talked, Kyla.
Yeah, so going back to stochastic terrorism, I think to be functional here, we should probably talk like, so I don't think that there are grounds by which we can legally do anything about it right now. There's nothing that I can think of, because I can't think of specific criteria that I might be able to apply to somebody like Noah Samson, who I think has done much more explicit things that I would call, that is for sure stochastic terrorism. Like, I think he's very extreme on that, and like some of his recent statements about Raytheon, that I don't know that I couldn't apply to Lauren Southern, but I don't know if I blame Lauren Southern's Great Replacement Theory videos for
Christchurch
white nationalist shooters. Right, exactly. And so it's like, or PewDiePie was named as well. I obviously don't blame PewDiePie for this.
Yeah.
So we're not going to take the word of the shooter, because we don't trust crazy people to know like what caused them to do this. And so my issue with legalizing stuff around stochastic terrorism is that I don't know how do you create a satisfying criteria that you can absolutely apply to somebody like Noah Samson that you definitely couldn't apply to Lauren Southern, because I think Lauren Southern's like Great Replacement video is also really fucking awful. It's just less in the direction of like walking you up to the line of violence as Noah Samson's Raytheon comments. But again,
could you tell what are the Raytheon comments? I haven't heard them. Could you tell what are they?
Oh, I'm gonna butcher it. So I'm gonna give you the gist. Somebody might correct me in chat.
Your super chat's ready.
Just to clarify, just to clarify before you say it.
$20 to correct Kyla live on air. Okay, gang, come on, get your super chat. Anyway,
I want to clarify before you say it, because watching the Lauren Southern video is like, I don't know how bad his comments are. Her comments are like, hey, we are being invaded. Our people are being killed. Like, I would say that is right up to the line of like, you are arguing for someone to go out and do something for this without saying it specifically.
So you think that say we created legal criteria for stochastic terrorism that was before incitement, right? So we have incitement, now we have...
Well, right. I don't think she should be legally prosecuted, because I think it's too big. I agree with you. I'm just saying, however bad Noah Samson is, I don't know how the comparison is. I know she's really fucking bad, so...
Yeah, so essentially, again, I'm going to butcher it, but he was talking about he was talking about the manifesto and the killings and Gaza and stuff like that. And he said, you know, guys, we have direct access and means to just stop people who are supplying all of the weapons. You know, he said, I bet you if you go out, you could figure out like a nearby Boeing officer like around you. And basically he like left it at that. And then
okay, that is damn. I guess that is worse, because it literally is, hey, look these people up. And here's why I don't think I agree. This shouldn't be legal, is because even though that is damn near like, okay, you are saying go out and kill these people. J-Reg, I don't know if you saw his video on the Luigi Mangione video. It was very funny, where he's like, isn't it crazy how all these CEOs and politicians are just walking around with explodable heads? Isn't that amazing? Isn't this weird? And then he does the like satire, like 3D like thing spinning around. And like, I don't think he's sincerely calling for violence. I don't know for sure, but like based on what I know about him, I don't think he is. However, I would say that is almost one-to-one with what you just described with Noah Samson of like, yeah, someone could absolutely read this and go do something about it. I agree with Misfit, who I guess is back now, which is good.
Yeah, I didn't kick him, gang. I didn't kick him. It was not my fault.
I don't know what the fuck just happened.
Misfit, I was just about to give you credence, which your idea of like policing your own is 100% like, if we want to make this panel calling out, and I think we should, people on well, at least my side, I don't think you're on the left, but me and Kyla are, saying, hey, Hasan and Noah Samson, and like, as much as I might understand your plight with Gaza, I think this is awful and we should do something about this. You are pretty much saying go out and do something about this in a violent
No.
way. That is, I would say that Noah Samson one, absolutely stochastic terrorism. I don't know if legally I want to pursue it, but 100% we need to be like, hey, this is bullshit and you can't do this. Like, this is,
Yeah,
at the
we
very
don't
least,
have
be
to.
deplatformed from a private institution, 100%.
Okay, I'll go
Oh,
let
yeah, I
Misfit.
wouldn't.
I'll go let Misfit weigh in. That I gotta get through these super chats. So.
Okay, you guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
Because it's saying I can't. Okay. I wouldn't even go as far as to saying prosecute. Like it's like this isn't, or even deplatform, right? I don't like the deplatforming thing. I don't like the censoring and banning thing. I think that Kanye should be able to make as many Nazi shirts as he wants so that we can identify these fucking people when they walk down the street. I think that it's really as simple as calling out your own side just in that regard. Literally just start being the voice against the other voice, right? Because I think what happens too much is people get into this tribalistic mentality of, well, we're on the same team, so I don't want to say anything about, Susie over here, who's being really, 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 really bad because Susie has a lot of followers, and I don't want Susie's followers to start coming at me, and I don't want to get kicked out of the group. Right. If you get into that mindset, like this is what I say about this, like the squad and everything, like AOC and Ilhan Omar. I think that the reason why the Democrats lost the 2024 election was not because Donald Trump was so well liked. It's because the Democrats were so well hated. Like that, you guys went too far, way too far left. You allowed the crazies in your party to become the most prominent voices, and people were like, the regular people that aren't on either side, just the people that don't fall apart, they go, no, I'm not down with this. Calling out your own side will give you a lot of credibility. So that's what I think should be done. It doesn't have to be deplatformed, doesn't have to be arrest, doesn't have to be prosecute, doesn't have to be anything.
I got to push
Just
back on
start
that
calling
last
out
thing,
your side.
Misfit, because like no one's calling out Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert, and you guys still
I do.
won. Like, no, you
I
did,
do.
but the majority of people are not. All right, and like I appreciate that you do because they're fucking insane. But like, I don't
Yeah.
think that is the reason. I mean, I'm sure people view those people as
Sure.
radical, and that could turn off independence. But like, there's like this doesn't apply to both sides at all in a way that I think
it
is
does.
affecting. All
think it
right,
does.
I don't see that, but it's fine. That's not the topic
We'll
of the
get
panel.
into it. We'll get
Agree
into it.
to
Let me
dis-
get
agree
through
to
these
disagree.
two.
Maybe let's get into the social response, because I think
will,
we're
sure.
all agreeing that there should be some, like, if there can't be a legal response, then there has to be a social response, because
Yeah,
I think we all agree
correct.
that stochastic terrorism is bad, right?
Yep.
And my issue with the lack of legal response is that I think legally we very much believe that sticks and stones will break your bones, and we try to legislate around that. But in the age of the internet, words can sometimes damage people in like massive ways, in ways that they never have been able to before. And I think that that really matters, right? This is why I think that there should be harassment charges based on how you platform and talk about other people. I think that there should be a number of different things that can be criminal based on your online behavior, even though it's just words, right? And so I'm curious what you guys think. Like, what is the social response as far as like people doing stochastic terrorism, people engaging in it? Like, for example, when I look at somebody like Nick Fuentes, if I knew that somebody ran into him or they confronted him at some sort of event, like a Jew, and were getting big and mad, and then they punched him in the face after they started fighting a little bit, I would still think that the assault is wrong, but I think it's way less wrong than if that Jew went up and punched a random person, or even just a random Nick Fuentes. Because I think in many ways, Nick Fuentes is almost permanently existing in a state of provocation.
Are you doing a
and, like,
stochastic terrorism right now?
things.
Not even joking. Like, isn't this kind of the same thing? Like, you're saying, look, I don't advocate the violence. However, I think it would be less bad than this thing. I think there would be completely understandable given Nick Fuentes' background. And by the way, I'm not saying you're wrong on any of this. It's just, this is exactly it right now happening in real time. I don't know if you were doing that on purpose, right? Like that is kind of, someone's going to hear you say that, and there's a good chance they might go and punch Nick Fuentes. Like, right?
Sure. I just would also say you should go to jail for it.
Okay, sure. But
Okay.
if someone said,
I mean,
I think you should go to jail for shooting up the Jewish museum,
I have a
however,
I agree.
Yeah,
This
just
is
real
why
quick.
this is why I think legally engaging with civilly punishing stochastic terrorism is muddy, because I think you agree. I'm at like the very far end right now, where it's like nobody listens to this and is like, that's really bad, right? But when they listen to Lauren Southern being like, guys, they're coming in, or they hear Vosh being like, trans people should arm up, they obviously understand, like, for example, guilty mind. Like, when they hear me talk about this, they know that I wouldn't think that it's a good thing necessarily that you're assaulting somebody. I would think it's less bad in this case. Whereas Vosh or Lauren Southern, potentially, you could possibly presume, or Noah Sampson, that there's some mens rea, that they would believe that it is good. They have some level of guilty mind of like, it would be good to do these actions, right? Which would be
And
the delineation between perhaps me and Noah Sampson.
yeah,
Can
the
I
question
I
also
command you what I'm
becomes,
saying.
can I
because
pick
I
apart
do
an
have to get
example
to
there
the
though?
super chats, or I'm never going to get there, right?
Hmm.
But the question also becomes, on that vein, is it always wrong to call for someone to like? Shouldn't we stop bad things? Like, if there is a horrific event going on and people are engaged in a horrific act, should you not call upon others to stop that horrific act?
Well, that's a
Right?
Oh,
very vague
Should we
statement,
not
but I see what you're
actually
saying,
do
Wick,
that?
but it's very vague, right? Because that could be like, hey, because by the way, I specifically, I think I super chatted Vosh about this back in like 2019, where he was watching a Steven
Wow,
Crowder
super chatting Vosh and
in
not Wick.
2019. I didn't even know who you were, Wick. I'm sorry. So, like at the time,
I didn't
at
stream
the
then.
at the time, he was watching a Steven Crowder video, and he was saying, I think this is 100% confirmed. He said, "Man, like someone like this guy should die," or something along those lines. If not, also like it sucks that like shootings happen at other places, but not places like this where he's doing this like open panels or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's like clearly like calling to violence, or at least like some sort of stochastic thing there. And I said, I don't think you should do that. But I don't think that's on a very different side of the spectrum of like, hey, like if there was someone like the government today in California was rounding up my friends and shooting them in the street, and me saying like, hey, someone should go stop this. I think that's much more justifiable. And to just say like, should we not advocate for bad things to stop? I think there's a huge gap between Ben Shapiro says bad things and someone should stop him, and hey, someone is killing my friends and someone should stop him, right? There's like a huge difference there. Can I really quickly pick apart, Kyla? I'm curious because you've lumped in.
Can you hold on to it? Can you write it down? Because again,
I got it in my brain. Go ahead. Go ahead. Make money.
And they get I can't defraud my customers. Okay. $10 from Doobie to say he targeted an event held by a pro-Israel lobby organization that has been fully in support of Israel's actions in Gaza. This wasn't about anti-Semitism. Reducing it to that is dishonest. I'm just going to go through them, then we can respond to them, right? $5 from Old School to say ask Erudite or anyone to define what a stochastic process is. No cheating. We'll get to that, right? $10 from Doobie. Quick reminder that
Bluesby, that
Misfit,
got me.
the guy pearl clutching over responsible language, is the same idiot who posted, "I'm okay with as many dead kids as it takes to stop Hamas." Then $10 more to say, to be clear for everyone, Misfit thanks from the river to the sea. This guy doesn't like you. Is genocidal,
no,
so
a
he
lot of
thinks
people don't.
Likud is a genocidal party. They run Israel right now. He supports them. Is this stochastic genocide? And then finally, from $5 from Old School to say the way Kyla defines stochastic terrorism shows that it's nothing more than a meme created to further undermine the free speech rights of those we don't like. And then $2 from Testicle Johnson. George Bush did 9/11.
Okay, I'll address the one directed at me because it's so funny. I love that I have to keep on. I'm not defending. I love that I have to keep on explaining this tweet because I did it for the purpose of ending the struggle session where people just keep on going, are you okay? Are you okay with Israel killing kids? Are you okay with Israel killing kids? And eventually I just went, you know what? Fucking, yep, I am. And here's why. And then they obviously leave out the whole, multiple paragraphs I went after. The comparison I was making was, yes, I'm okay with it. I don't like it, right? Just like I'm okay with how Nagasaki ended the war and saved more lives in the long run. Just like Operation Gomorrah in Hamburg, Germany, like I just mentioned earlier, was the right thing to do, targeting civilian areas. I don't like it. I have never called for, I have never endorsed, I have never relished or joyed in the fact that an innocent person is dying. But if you are constantly doing this struggle session with us, going like, and I know it's emotional blackmail, I'm eventually just going to pull your card and go, yep, I'm okay with it. Right? And that's all that was. But it's not even, I'm not backpedaling. I said it, I meant it. I am okay with it because I believe that Hamas is an evil organization. And if it is not stopped at all costs, then more people are going to die. So in a pragmatic way, yes, I'm okay with it. Do I like it? No.
I unironically, even though I probably disagree with you on a lot, Misfit, the way that you phrase that, especially using examples of much worse wars, I don't agree, but I'm like, I get what you're saying, and I don't think that's stochastic to say, hey, I think the cost of how bad this is in Gaza is worth the outcome that I want.
Sure.
Yeah, that's an opinion to have about the war that I might not share, but
Yeah.
that's at least I think you explained that well enough.
It's an honest one. It's an honest take, and you might not like it, but it's just an honest take. And
Okay.
I don't like that everybody just tiptoes around it, because what the goal and the motivation, especially online, is
They
a
They have
manipulation
to,
tactic.
right? One of
Yeah.
the issues that, like, I think is going on in the Israel-Gaza war, for example, is that, like, nobody in North America really has, like, a sophisticated theory of violence. Like, we don't really understand violence. We don't know, like, what justifies violence when it's not justified. Like, we don't even have the beginnings of this. We just think violence bad, basically,
Hmm.
except for maybe self-defense. And I think we're seeing that with, like, war. Like, Ukraine is an easy one to solve because it's such an easy, obvious bad guy. But most
Hmm.
wars are not like that. Like the India-Pakistan war, there isn't really
Yeah.
a good guy. Like there's not really a good guy, and that's the case in almost all wars.
Um,
I think there's a difference
Anyway,
between a political war and an ideological war, and I think that the war in Ukraine and Russia is a political war, right? It's over land, it's over hubris, it's over two. I don't really support Zelensky that much. I support the Ukrainian people. I have nothing against those people, but I think that with the Israel Hamas war, it really is a good guy bad guy, because you have radical Islamic terrorists who are chanting death to Israel, death to America. There is no appeasing that ideology. They really do just want
Yeah,
to
but
kill every Jew. And
hold on, Mister. You do understand that there are people on the Israeli side who are talking about nuking Gaza, glassing Gaza, killing
I'm one of
all the
them.
Palestinians, getting rid of all of them,
you're
and
one
that's
of them?
also,
Yeah,
I mean, like,
I'm one
in
of them.
just the same way
You think
that
we should nuke
Hamas's
Gaza?
comments are
I think
bad, right?
I think
You can
that if you
recognize
were
that is
to
also bad, correct?
no,
Wait,
no,
I
no.
want to hear. I want to hear him
Get.
explain.
Okay.
I'll make the same
we're never
argument.
going to talk about stochastic terrorism, by the way,
I
guys.
know. I'm
Like,
sorry.
I'm
big
so
bad
like
I my question will bring it
it's
back, but
so
I want to
hard.
finish this because this is very
Yeah,
interesting that he
it's
wants to
just
nuke
so hard
Gaza.
to separate the yeah,
I'm
but
not
go
saying I
ahead and then
want.
we'll get back. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'm not saying I want to. What I'm saying is I've made this tweet as well, which I will defend. I said the logical thing to do, not the moral thing to do, the logical thing to do after October 7th was to nuke Gaza. Right? And I'm saying logically. I'm not saying I like it. I'm saying if you think about it, that would have been over. Right? It would have been horrible, but it would have been over.
But
Instead, what we have is a year and a half of brutality, right? Versus one event, which would have been brutal. So no, I did advocate for it. I take
how
it back. I don't think
how
I
can
don't
you
think they should
not
have.
call it a genocide when you have those statements though? If you're
Yeah,
like literally that would be better.
this is the problem with using the term genocide. Okay, if you use the term genocide, you have to understand what genocide actually is, right?
Hmm.
Genocide is trying to eliminate a people group, right? Is
Right.
the systematic eradication of a people group. Hamas is not a people group. It is a terrorist organization. It's not a people group.
Sure, but
They don't want
if you did the
Israel does
whole
not.
Gaza, that's all the Palestinians,
Israel
right?
does not. Israel does not want to kill Palestinians. That's the problem.
No, no,
If they
okay,
wanted
whatever.
to, they
This is
could have.
this isn't the talk of the debate. I'll go
We'll
back to
go
my
back. We'll
question.
go back.
So Kyla, one of the examples you brought up, because you did Lauren Southern, Noah Sampson, both of those seemed really bad. But the specific Vosh one, I gave you an example of which I think is a bad Vosh one. But the Vosh one you said of trans people should arm up. I have said similar comments in the recent weeks because I think that what's happening right now in the government is very scary, and I think that there's a very justifiable fear of people like door knocking, overstepping their bounds, and like a fascist like kind of a takeover of an oppression of minority groups. And I think there's nothing stochastic necessarily about saying, hey, you should arm yourself just in case. Especially if you add on, I don't think people should be going out and committing violence against the government right now. I think this is incredibly unhelpful. If you look at this Elias Rodriguez situation, not only are they going to be using this to persecute people who say free Palestine now or who wear the keffiyeh, but it's just, this didn't move the needle, I think, at all. But to
sure.
also say you should arm yourself, do you think that's stochastic terrorism?
No, because I think terrorism is a key part of stochastic terrorism. Like right, when we're talking about terrorism, there's an element of using violence to intimidate and targeting civilians is a really key part of typically terrorism, right? So like when you're talking about army, but the reason I bring up the Vosh example is on the continuum of stochastic terrorism. A lot of people might claim that Vosh is doing he's the stochastic terrorist here, right? And so I think this is why we have to kind of have better conversations about this concept, because I think if we're going to wield this word and make it punchy and meaningful and essentially say you're being a terrorist, right? Let's like remove the sarcastic part. You're being a terrorist. You're just not killing civilians. I think we need to be clear about what as a social group, what that means, what that looks like. And I feel like we don't have a clear line, because right now, like you said, me saying like it's less bad potentially to punch Nick Fuentes because he exists like basically in a permanent state of like fighting words, which is like one form of defense that you could use in an assault case, right? And you're like, well, isn't that stochastic terrorism? And it's like, not really, because I'm not saying that people should go attack Fuentes. I'm saying it could be a plausible defense. However, some people who really love Nick Fuentes probably would feel upset by that and might claim that it's stochastic terrorism, which is why we have to have some level of like social conversation about like there has to be some line of where we would say this person is actually being terroristic, right?
Problem is
And
it's subjective. That's the problem. So like trying to make a line on something so subjective, the line will just keep moving. Like so we had this kid
you can
be
make a
your
line for
favorite.
yourself and you can
Yeah,
advocate for
well,
that line. And
that's what
then
I'm saying. So like
this is the way all of social
have you guys
dynamics work,
seen
right?
have you guys seen the your favorite guy kid that was advocating for the shooting after the fact, and he said it was an act of resistance. He was essentially using Hamas language. Like he goes, no, this was an act of resistance. This was not an anti-Semitic attack. This, that, and the other. And he's like, and we need to do more to stand up and fight against these Zionists, right? And I think that would be definitely a clear stochastic terrorism type of post.
Sure, yeah.
The
Taking a
problem
violent
is,
thing and saying do this again, like 100%.
yes, exactly.
But if that might be Kyla's thing of this is already over the line of this could even be perceived as illegal,
Look,
right?
I
Like
think that
Oh yeah, the
I
FBI
hate,
is going
I
to be
just,
the
I
FBI
hate
is going to
this.
be going to his house.
I hate this subjective argument because I think all it does is it like turns our brains off to be like, well, I guess we can't really decide and think about it. And it's like, you can't. Things can
No, I
be
want to.
relative, right? Because what I'm saying isn't subjective, it's relative. Fundamentally, what I'm saying is it's relative. Like in the case of Nick Fuentes, I think we have enough patternicity of his behavior, his rhetoric, his actions to suggest some level of mens rea, where like he is knowingly, intentionally, and like
For sure.
explicitly trying to
Hey,
radicalize people because he hates Jews and he's willing to lie to them to do this process because he believes in like a number of horrible fucking awful things, and he would probably be okay with harming civilians for his like glorious Catholic monarchy revolution, whatever, right?
well,
And
Nick
so what we
Fuentes
have
said,
to do,
go
just
ahead,
hold
sorry.
on. When we're talking about this, we have to essentially establish what is reasonable belief. Because I don't think anybody reasonably would listen to me saying, like, maybe one of the ways that you deal with stochastic terrorism is that you basically say that somebody like Nick Fuentes is in a permanent state of being provocative, right? And that matters if somebody does an assault on him because it would weigh in on the court's decision of the assault or crimes may be done to him. And we can say, no, I don't like this idea. That's totally fine. But we have to engage with this because there is some level of reasonable belief where we can establish this is a stochastic terrorist, and as a social group, this is a reasonable response to those labeled as a terrorist.
I think it's
right?
very
So,
important as well, just real quick. I think it's very important that we have to recognize someone saying it once isn't enough. Even if they say something
yeah,
terrible, right? Like say someone should go out and um, get guns and take care of this
like yeah,
problem. Just
like
once
one
is
tweet
is
is not.
not
Yeah,
is not enough.
why not?
There are people, the
but
people I'm talking about, the people I think that are more concerning are the people who are doing it over and over and over constantly.
Sure.
sure.
But
Hasan,
the one time is bad, right? Like
Well, the one time is bad, but like so, Nick Fuentes said about me. This is something he just did last week. He said, in a better society, Misfit Patriot would be murdered by his government." Right, that's like, and because I called him out, right?
Yeah.
And
It also
Nick,
depends if one time is bad, if we've agreed on what one time even means, right? So you said what I did is stochastic terrorism. I
Potentially.
reject that because I think it's a deeply watering down of the term, and I want the term to mean something. I want it to mean something when I say this person is being a terrorist, right? And I don't want it to just mean somebody being like, I kind of get what Luigi Maggioni did. I don't want to call that person a terrorist. I think it's stupid and it wastes the word, right? And so we do have to create a reasonable belief of what is bad enough that we call this person a terrorist. We do have to do that.
How can I bet we couldn't even get all three, if not four of us, to agree on a belief here
that's
today, which is
that's the
why it's like
problem.
I agree with you. Like obviously in even in legal terms, like there's a standard of a reasonable person would believe, like that's a thing that exists, that judges even then subjectively have to determine themselves. But there's something there where it's like, okay, obviously someone could see this, or like you can't claim negligence to a crime to not doing it. And in this discussion, I think there's a very good conversation to be had about how we're policing our own. And I think we can keep going example by example and say, okay, this one absolutely is, and we should call that out, and this one isn't. But is there really going to be a way where like, okay, the line is this specifically? Because I don't think there's going to be a way to do that.
And that's what I was saying. I wasn't trying to like diminish or water down what you're saying.
No, I'm saying that soy
hold
pill
on.
was.
Yeah,
Well,
when I said about the punching
No, no,
thing.
no. What I'm saying is when I said it's subjective, I wasn't trying to water it down, but it's a reality that it is subject to interpretation. And if you have something that's subject to interpretation, like the line that we're talking about, if it's not something that can be okay, so like murder is a very objective thing, right? Assault is a very objective thing, right?
What
Like
about pornography?
pornography is a very objective thing,
Is
like
it?
it's
No, that's
yeah, I mean,
a
well,
lot more
you could try
subjective.
to make the art argument, but no, pornography is pornography. It is
Can you define it for me?
I would say showing nudity online, right? Like
What about like a
and
biology textbook? Is that pornography?
If I
correct.
took
All
my
right,
shirt
so
off right
That's
now,
why
would
it's a
I
little harder
be
to define, I would say, than murder.
yeah,
To your point.
and all right, nudity with an erotic connotation, if that's better.
Intent,
Yeah,
right?
intent.
Pornography
So
makes an intent.
and yeah, I guess you could say that pornography is subjective. I will concede that argument. What I'm saying is, with the line of stochastic terrorism that we're trying to find, right? You can't find it because it's going to
No,
what you
Connor.
just said. Nick Fuentes, who deserves to be punched in the face, I don't think he should be punched in the face. He just deserves it. If you punch him in the face, he becomes a martyr. And people that follow Nick Fuentes and like Nick Fuentes will be like, "You punched him in the face for no reason. How dare you? He's just speaking his mind. He's just having his First Amendment right." And then you have people on the other side that would be like, "No, he should have been punched in the face. I'm one of the people who thinks that Nick Fuentes deserves a punch. I would never do it, and I don't think anybody should do it because I don't want to make him a fucking victim. I want him to keep talking, and I want people like me, you, and you, and you to talk against him. I think that the only way to combat these people is with your voice. So,
Can I use your example though? The Nick Fuentes example that you
hold
had.
on. Kyla first.
Oh,
Kyla
okay.
first, and then we'll go to
Yeah,
Soy.
just to respond. So when we're talking about subjective, we are able to make determinations of subjective things all the time. Like a large portion of civil court is fundamentally subjective based on the judge and the jury with some level of like precedent and standards that we've erected over time. So just because something is subjective, it doesn't mean we can arrive at it. And I'm not saying to this panel, let's solve stochastic terrorism. But for example, one thing that I think is really important to do for yourself and for your audience is go, what is stochastic terrorism to us? Like, what does it actually look like? Does it matter that much? And the issue is that when we say subjective, then we also like create this excuse where we don't really have to wrestle with it. And I think the issue is that when it comes to things like violence, which is increasingly becoming an issue in society, we don't think about violence enough, and we need to. We really need to. So I agree that I won't have the same line as Soy Pill necessarily, but it's reasonable to believe that they'd be a lot fucking closer than super far apart, right? I don't think you'd actually point at me saying it's less bad to punch Nick Fuentes and be like, that's a terrorist right there.
I want to ask Kyla a question real quick. Because we're talking about communities, right? And I don't know about you, Misfit, but most of us have communities online that we built, that we moderate to varying degrees. With
I
varying
don't.
amounts
No
of
Discord
success,
for me.
right? Well,
Me neither.
luckily for you, Soy Pill, Discord's horrible. Never have one. I guess my question for you, Kyla, would be if someone in your community were to say something like, you know what? I don't think what Luigi did was that Was that wrong? And I think that we need more Luigis. Is that stochastic terrorism to you?
Nope, not necessarily. I don't think that would be a terrorist at that point. That's not far enough along the line.
Really? That seems like
No.
they're explicitly calling for more, but I think that might even be like,
Sure.
especially if they have a platform, might even be like legally possible.
Terrorism's a really big word. Terrorism's a really big word. So I think that we should be cautious when we're talking about this. So, for example, if when they talk about the United Healthcare, they start streaming about it all the time, right? They constantly keep reminding people how to arm themselves. They start talking about the best ways, potentially unrelated, totally unrelated, just like what are some ways that you can hide bodies, you know? If they started doing a whole bunch of behaviors alongside this, then I would totally grant that it's a terrorist. But this is why like a single moment, this is why like it's subjective and it's relative fundamentally. It's why it can't be solved in legality, and it's why even things like porn can't be solved like just legally. But you can kind of look at it and feel it out and hopefully put your finger on when it's starting to happen and go, okay, this is obviously bad.
I think porn when you that's what this is perfect, because I'm gonna agree with Kyla here, right? You ask what porn is, porn when you see it, right? If you see a National Geographic article from like some tribe in Africa where the women aren't wearing shirts, you instinctively just know that that's not pornography, right? So but if you are scrolling online and you see an OnlyFans page and a girl is like, biting her finger and doing the fucking pose, you're like, that's porn,
Well,
right?
the problem, Misfit, is, I mean, and this is going to be a really dumb example, but like, I only know this because I've been on the internet so long. If you scroll and you find a picture of a very inflated Sonic the Hedgehog, you might be, that's a weird drawing. And yet, that is 100% porn from DeviantArt that people jerk off to because they have an inflation fetish. But to call it porn explicitly relies a certain context and knowledge in the back that I don't think everyone has. And you gave two very explicitly obvious examples where I think there's a whole spectrum in between.
Yeah, there could be a spectrum based off of fetishes, but I think that what we can do is use common sense to define traditional pornography and not get into that area of somebody could look at this erotically, right? Or just use the common sense examples of literally just a human being like naked ish or doing suggestive things, because like you scroll on Instagram, my Instagram feed is like I literally have to block these porn accounts all the time because Instagram has literally turned into an OnlyFans ad, right?
Porn is
you know it's algorithmic, it's based on your searches, right?
It's really not to me. Well, maybe it is, I don't know, but maybe it's because I'm blocking them, I don't know, but yeah, what I'm saying is to go down the yes, it's subjective, but like what Kayla was saying, she's right, where it's like we can obviously define it based off of what we know, which I think is good.
I don't disagree with this at all. The problem I have, or not even a problem, but it's just one of those like, what do we actually do about this? Obviously, right, Kyla, I'm not asking you to solve, here's the cloud of stochastic terrorism today, and we can put everything in. The problem is, I know we can go through a list of 10 examples, and for each of these, all four of us are going to have a slightly different opinion on whether or not we think that crosses the line. I think we can agree, already we have, that we need to call out people on our side when it's happening, and we can look at stuff like Hasan and Noah Samson and be like, okay, this is really bad, this is a pattern of behavior. But even the example that you gave, Kyla, which was someone talking about hiding bodies, someone talking to ARM, someone streaming about the United Healthcare CEOs, like that's a very explicit, like, okay, very obviously, yeah, you and I would probably agree on that, definitely 100%. But I think there's so many more vague examples of this where even just Hasan posting that makeshift gun thing in reply to that sender, I think that's stochastic terrorism. I think that is absolutely saying, hey, I'm referencing a time when a person went out and killed a politician, and I'm saying this should happen again. I think that is an incitement to any and all of his viewers. And that's just one thing. That's not a pattern. It is in the context of his pattern. I think, yeah, if a private institution has if a private institution has a some nebulous cloud of like, we reasonably have a board of people that looks at this and says this is stochastic terrorism, yeah, 100%. I think that one was way over the line of what I would consider stochastic terrorism, because it's not an explicit call to violence. It's just a picture. There's plausible deniability, and yet everyone knows what it is. And the perfect example of this, which is going everywhere, is the meme right now of someone should do it, right? That means nothing, right? That means absolutely nothing, but everyone knows what that means. It's calling for the assassination of a politician. So if Hasan retweeted someone should do it, that's one thing. Sure, it's in the if it was out of context, if he had never, if someone like Kyla, I don't think Kyla probably has done anything stochastic to my knowledge. If she retweeted that today, I would say that's stochastic terrorism. And so like, The problem is none of us are going to agree 100% what it is. We do have to look at all of these on a individual basis. That I guess that's my kind of take on it. There's never going to be 100% thing, but if private institutions can come together and kind of have a reasonable definition of this, I think that, yeah, if there's like I don't know if we need like the council of Twitch streamers to come in every time something like this happens, but I do think we should be doing that. To all of your points, we need to do that.
The issue with it, and this is an issue with I have even on a social level, even as a social level, and even as like a platform such as Twitch or Twitter or whatever, right? Doing these things is that so I wonder what the cost is versus the benefit to doing it. So the benefit to doing it would be to tamp down the rhetorical temperature, if you will. But the cost to it, I think, is characterized most clearly by the recent response to the 8647 stuff. You
Yeah,
guys all
well,
saw that? The
I mean,
8647 people
yeah.
who'd been using 8645, 8646 for years, all of a sudden, 8647 was definitely a call to violence, and there was
Well,
no mistaking it. There was
he-
no. Just let me finish real
here's
quick, right? Just
yeah.
let me finish real quick, and then I'll let you respond. There was no different nothing. It could be nothing else, and it was used as a weapon against people's political enemies, which will absolutely happen and has happened on platforms where people will try to weaponize the rules to attack the people that they're going after. And I worry that the cost of codifying this on even a societal level, right? Like
Uh,
even as a platform will not be worth the juice won't be worth the squeeze.
So let me
Go
let
ahead,
me
Mister, and
let
then
me
I'll let you.
agree with you on in general. I don't think people should be censored, right? I don't think that people should be banned. I think that honestly, I think the way the internet should work is you should give users, like the actual people on the platform, the ability to device ban other people so that you literally just don't see them at all, right? You device ban them, you get rid of all their backup accounts, they can't continue to harass you. However, in your specific example of James Comey doing the 8647 thing, originally, right when I first heard it, I was like, that's not a call to violence because I worked in the restaurant industry. 86 just means get rid of something. Okay. However, it was pointed out to me that James Comey was a fucking FBI director. So he worked for the government. 86 in that sense, he more than reasonably would know that it does mean kill in criminal terminology. And I don't think that, there should be any criminal charges, but I do think the response to it was correct, where we should condemn that. We should start saying, hey, dude, maybe for at least for like, and especially Trump. I know some people here don't like him, especially Trump. The motherfucker got shot at. He literally got shot at. They tried to assassinate him twice. The guy has had call for violence after call for violence. I think that there should be some level of social outrage against James Comey being like 8647, even if he tries to backpedal and say, I didn't know it meant violence, right? I think that we should go, bullshit, dude. You worked for the federal government as a law enforcement officer. That is well known to be the code for kill. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay,
Which
question.
federal
Is it
agency uses
stochastic
86?
terrorism?
Oh, anyway, go
Is it
ahead.
stochastic
Um,
terrorism if you advocate for the killing of like what you view as like a military opponent in like potentially like a political struggle?
Well, let's define terrorism, right? Terrorism is the unlawful use of violence or intimidation, especially against civilians, to achieve political, ideological, religious, or social objectives,
Yeah, so
right?
say it's not
So,
against civilians. You're like, I don't want to kill Republicans. I want to kill only Trump. Say that that's your position. Is it terrorism, right? Because I think this is part of the interesting
no.
conversation because when you look like everyone is fine with some levels of violence, even political violence, because most people support the Civil War, right? Most
Hmm.
people support the Revolutionary War. And so
Yep.
I'm sure right before those wars broke out, there were a lot of people inciting a lot of violence against people who were not at that time explicit military targets, but would later become them, right? And so I think this is this really interesting conversation where essentially we are obviously okay with talking about violence and doing violence to others to some degree. This is
Agreed.
obviously true. And what we have to do is get mature enough to figure out when those lines are being crossed, right? Is it
Agreed.
reasonable to joke about killing the president if you think he's literally destroying the country and tearing down the Constitution or something like that? And I think we have to have that conversation because in that way, potentially, then he's kind of like a military target. So is it targeting civilians, or is it targeting the leader of what you think is bad? Is it bad for pro-Palestine people to say that maybe Netanyahu should die? I'm not sure. That's the question we have to answer.
I don't think that criminally it's illegal. I think that it
Not
should
criminally,
be. I think
morally.
that it should be. I think that it should be frowned upon, and I think that it should be called out. I don't think that. Look, I mean, I think that I hope, at least, I really fucking hope, that everybody on this panel agrees that Hamas is a terrorist organization that did an evil and awful thing on October 7th. Can we all agree on that?
Yeah.
Everyone? Great. Thank God. All right. So when I say I hope every member of Hamas is killed, right, I'm only talking about terrorists. I'm not saying every Palestinian should be killed. I'm saying I really hope that every member of
I mean,
Hamas
you
gets
did
killed.
mention
wait,
that
yeah.
you wanted
Hold
to
on,
nuke
hold on, hold on.
Gaza.
I'm going. Hold on,
I
hold on.
mean,
Hold on. I was about to give you this layup. But when I say even if that means Palestinian civilians dying, then they go pearl clutching, not realizing that what I'm actually advocating for is less people overall in the long run dying, right? Because I am of the firm belief that leaving Hamas in power, leaving them to regroup, reassess, and just continue their terrorism down the road, I think in the long run it will lead to more people like being killed.
the problem I have with that take and Kyla's take as well, right? Is that you have to compare it to what we are at now. So I'm going to deal with Kyla's take first, right? So when people call for your point about Trump being possibly a potential military target in the future, or people can see that as a military target, right? If we get to the point where the United States is in another, frankly, civil war, I think that where we are at today does not justify morally someone calling for a civil war, because a civil war will, in all cases, be far, far worse, far, far bloodier, far, far more violent, do far, far more harm than whatever Trump can do, whatever Trump is doing right now. Even though I specifically call out and oppose what Trump is doing, a civil war would be worse than that. Just as to Misfit's point about how saying, well, at all costs, at any means necessary. I don't agree. I think that we can review a large numbers of things that would be worse than Hamas remaining existing, right? Nuking Gaza would be worse for a host of reasons. I think it would
True.
lead to cascading effects. The world would be a worse place if
Mm.
Israel decided to nuke Gaza. For again, not just because all the Palestinians, Hamas or otherwise, would be dead, right? But because of how the world would respond to that and what it
So
would do, and just the Pandora's box it would open up, the allowances that it would lead to if not responded to forcibly for other countries to start to do. It would be just horrific all around. So I get what you're saying, but I think that we have to compare it. Like we can, in hindsight, for the Civil War, we could recognize that the state of America was better after the Civil War than it was before. But I
so that
don't
was
think the same holds true today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do, and let me try to explain where I'm coming from with my nuke Gaza, which I really don't think they should do, by the way. All right, like I just said, I said it would be a logical thing, and here's why. Right, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I think it was somewhere between 100 to 160,000 civilians were killed. Right, and it was one event, 160,000 people. That's awful. Women, children, innocent people died. But it got Japan to surrender, and every military expert, every historian will tell you that Japan would not surrender, and they were going to pull us into a greater war that was going to continue, and hundreds of thousands, maybe up to 1 million more people would die. So when you look at it logically and pragmatically, and when you say, would you be willing, it's the trolley analogy, right? Would you run over one person to save 5 people because you have a train coming down the tracks or a trolley coming down the tracks? That's what I'm trying to say.
Can I give you an out? Can I give you
Hypothetically,
an out, Misfit? This is because I think I
sure.
understand what you're saying. Of like I've had these like hypotheticals where I'm like, okay, like obviously this is an ongoing conflict. People are dying back and forth. What if we just like took out one side of this, wouldn't that make it better in the long run? But hear me out. First of all, I don't think all historians agree with that, but that's regardless for the Hiroshima
A
thing.
lot, but yeah.
Many do. But here's the thing. Right now, one of the policies of Israel, and I think Trump has endorsed this, is to completely ethnically cleanse, not by murder, but by removing every person from Gaza and putting them somewhere else, and relocating all of them, right? Which is literally an ethnic cleansing. But regardless, this would eliminate the problem of having this border country or state or territory that is at war with you. I think you could say that that is the same thing of what you're kind of saying of like, if we got rid of all these people from this area, there would not be this back and forth conflict. And as much pain and suffering as that would cause, this would in the long run make it better for the conflict overall. I think that's a much more defensible take to have than nuking Gaza is the logical choice, because I think the ultimate like not absurdity, but the ultimate what do we do? Remove one of these sides. In that case, is not killing literally every single one of them.
Yeah, well, it just sounds bad when you say it, right? Nuke Gaza. It just sounds bad, which is
it really doesn't ring off the tongue very well. Yeah,
it's gonna get a reaction out of people. But I don't. To be completely frank, I don't care how bad something sounds if I'm just being honest. When I was trying to say, if I think personally that something in the long run will save more lives, it will lead to peace, it will lead to a solution, then I think that's a pragmatic approach. Now, you just said like it is technically an ethnic cleansing to remove the Palestinians from the equation, resettle them in Jordan, Egypt, and other places. I did a podcast where I was talking to the opposition leader to the King of Jordan, and he was making some really good arguments about why that would be a great thing to do, and they would be accepted in Jordan. Not under the current leadership, but the people in Jordan would welcome them, because there's a lot of Palestinians in Jordan. I think there's 11 million of them, so they would fit in over there. If Trump's plan was to remove those people, let's say even temporarily, potentially rebuild Gaza. I know, I understand, but let's say hypothetically, right? Let's say that Trump's plan. It's actually not hypothetical. This is actually a potential possibility. Trump removes Palestinians. He rebuilds Gaza, and he rebuilds it with the partners of the Abraham Accords. All right. So you have Saudi Arabia, you have Jordan, you have Egypt, you have other people that are building in that region. And essentially, what he's doing is creating an alliance in that region where if Iran, Hamas, Houthis, all these other people were to attack it, then they wouldn't just be attacking Israel. They would be attacking all of the neighboring people that have now created an alliance. And then, which is why I said potentially temporarily, if you were to create some type of peace in there and have these Muslim nations that are maybe even occupying it, bringing the Palestinians back would not be that big of a stretch, as long as they would agree to adhere to the laws under the new government, right? Like I understand.
I'm gonna let Kyla respond
Go
to
ahead.
this one. Go
Go ahead,
ahead, Kyla.
I don't really know where to respond, because I don't know. Is this just an Israel-Palestine debate now?
Yeah, we could go back to stochastic terrorism.
Yeah,
but
obviously, ethnic cleansing is always it almost often is presented as a temporary fix and becomes a permanent outcome. Like that's just the reality every time, right? So I don't think that ethnically cleansing Gaza for now and then promising their homes back is the solution. I also think that like people need to be really real about like Gaza Palestinians. Like if it wasn't Hamas, it would be Fatah, right? And if it wasn't Fatah, it would be the the Brotherhood. I can't remember their name. That's there. The Jihadist Brotherhood, right, from Egypt. So this idea that like, yeah, anyways.
Well, yeah, but like Misfit, like this is why I'm a little confused, because like I can understand like if you idealistically play this out, there could be a way this works out. But I mean, would you advocate for the same thing for like Russia nuking Ukraine or vice versa? I mean, it seems a little over the top.
No,
and the reason it sounds bad is not just because it's, oh, how dare you advocate for the killing, but it's also because, like, realistically, like Wick said, I think if you really saw, like, the implications of Israel nuking an entire territory, I think a lot of Middle Eastern Muslim countries would probably this would turn into an escalating thing. It wouldn't just be like, oh, problem done, right? Like,
tie this back to stochastic terrorism and follow up Misfit, just to follow up that question, Misfit. Isn't it possible that if in the future, if I could tell you, Trump is going to make it a civil war, there is going to be a civil war, isn't it possible that by Comey doing 8647 and therefore maybe resulting in the assassination of Trump is actually offsetting major future destruction? Because if he's not there, then the civil war potentially never happens and all the harm comes from it, right? So it's like,
under that hypothetical, then yeah, it would be just like the the founder saying that King George it needs to die. It's like, but the problem is it's that's not based on reality. Trump is not going to create a civil war, and
Well,
I don't see how there's any evidence that he will. I mean, I get you can
let's
opine
talk.
on it.
Yeah, let's not to interrupt you. I'm going to pass the ball right back to you, but let's talk about that for a minute, right? Because Trump is rounding people up and deporting them because they are criticizing Israel.
Who's
He's
they're
rounding
no
people
no
up.
no. He's
He's
rounding
deporting
people
them
up that
because they
aren't
write
citizens.
op-eds, right?
They aren't citizens. Like that, we did this in our last debate,
We
right?
did.
Where we agreed that I think that we agreed that the person you're referring to, the one that wrote the article, went through the entire due process and was found not to be.
She was released.
um
She might still have trials coming up. I haven't
Yeah, but
checked today,
but
right?
isn't that the system working as intended? I understand that you might not like the fact that, she wrote something that was disagreeable and that maybe originally looked like it may have been in support of a terrorist organization, and then maybe people went too far in arresting her.
Did you
But
read
the
it yet?
system,
Wait,
but the
wait,
system
wait,
worked.
I have to ask you a question, Misfit, because this seems completely at odds with your previous position, which is we should never deplatform anyone, and we have to have all these opinions out, and Kanye should be able to print all his Nazi shirts. But now you're defending the idea that if someone says something that might be slightly interpreted as terrorism, the government should be able to lock them up and throw them through this arduous legal process. Like,
I think that they should definitely be able to investigate. 100%. I mean, that's
but that's not
common
what's
sense.
just. It's
But
not
that's
just
not
an
what
investigation.
happened.
It's
I
I'm
agree. I
arresting them and
agreed.
putting them in prison until we
Hold
go
on.
through this process and make them go through all the
I
intimidating them and potentially locking them up even longer. Like that's much
well,
worse than deplatforming.
I agreed that they shouldn't have done it. Right? Like
Oh,
if there
okay.
was not if that woman did nothing wrong and the process played out that she actually didn't, then they obviously shouldn't have arrested her. However, people make mistakes, and this justice system is not perfect. So what I'm saying is, if you hyperfixate on this mistake that was made in the justice system where they did do this,
But that
then yeah, you can use that
I
to
think the word
I
mistake
wanna,
there.
yeah,
It go,
I wanna toss it to Kyla. She's got her hand up and she's being such.
Just to
Go
tie
on.
back, because you said that she isn't a citizen, right? It's really important that we make it clear non-citizens have tons of rights in America, right? Like
Yeah, they have
not
Fifth
being
Amendment rights, but they also have the
they
due
have
process
due
right. She
yeah,
went
which
through due
she
process.
right, but you also have free speech rights as a non-citizen.
Yeah, and like I said, they for some reason, and I'm not saying, I mean, I don't think anybody on this panel knows the motivation. You can guess, you can assume, but you do not know the motivation. She was, I guess, arrested for something that she wrote,
hey,
which
Mooncake,
I think is
welcome.
wrong. I don't think that she should have been. She was
Well,
arrested
why
for
can't
something
we
that
just
she
take
wrote.
the
Hold on.
government at
Why
their
do you think it's a
word?
mistake too? Yeah, like
Well, because
because
she was obviously
you said very sure it was a mistake, whereas we're
it was a
saying
mistake
this is in line
because
with
she
the
was let go.
context of Trump's rhetoric of intimidating people
But
that are speaking out
hold
against
on,
him,
but
right?
you're taking one example of the justice system. All right, so look, I said this in the last debate. I have been arrested before. I was arrested. I was locked up. I was thrown in a cell. I went through a trial, and
Hmm.
at the end of the trial, the jury said not guilty.
Okay.
Right, and that happens all the time.
What was
Right,
it
like
for though?
that's.
Like, what did you do? Like, was it just something you said?
Oh, it was. I refused a breathalyzer. I was a DUI. I refused a breathalyzer. I wasn't
But
drunk.
that's a lot different, right? Like, this isn't just
Hold on, no,
someone said
it's
something that
actually
the president doesn't
no.
like,
Hold
and then
on.
they're
It's
kind of
actually it's actually the same exact thing, right? Because if you think about it, right, what happens is you have a suspicion of a crime, right? The suspicion of the crime in my case was I refused a breathalyzer because I drank 2 beers. I
Mhm.
knew I wasn't drunk. I knew I was not out or like operating under the influence, but I didn't want the breathalyzer to show any alcohol. So I said no. And what
Okay.
they do is now they go, okay, we automatically assume you are too intoxicated to operate a motor vehicle, and
Right.
we're going to take you into jail.
Yeah.
You can go to trial and you can argue it. When I went to trial, I had the literal bartender at the bar get on the stand and say he really did only have 2 beers. He was not drunk,
But were
right?
you locked up for the duration of this until your trial?
Well, no, but you know what? It is different in that regard. But what I'm
Okay.
trying to say is what the system did to her happens all the time. The government will arrest somebody who did not actually commit an actual crime, and they will put them through due process.
Sure,
That is what
but
happens
Misfit,
in
can
this.
I
But what
just
we're
can
saying,
I
hold on,
describe
just real
what
quick,
should
this
happen
is
here?
important. This is important.
Okay,
This
go
is
ahead.
important. And I don't want to relitigate the debate, but it is in it's important to discuss in the context of the discussion we're having, right? Uh, my claim here, and I think the evidence bears this out, is that they're being put through this process because of their speech, not because of a crime, not because of anything. It's because they're saying things that the
Mhm.
Trump administration does not like. And they are
Is
doing it specifically to non-citizens because they feel they can get away with it.
your
They
first
are
part was your
saying this.
hold on, your
That we
first
don't
part
have
was
to
right.
guess, right?
Hold on, your
Go
first
ahead,
part was right.
respond, then I'm going to give it to Kyla. Go ahead.
Your first part was 100% right, right? Your second part was your opinion, right? Where you say they're doing this, and then you added because, right? You don't have any evidence to actually back up the because they don't like it. How is it possible? Is it at all possible, right? In the realm of possibility that they are arresting these people because they fully believe that they are supporting a terrorist organization? Like, because that's what the argument is going to be made by on my side. They
You're
think
allowed to
this will.
support. You're allowed to
I under,
voice support for terrorist
but in
organizations.
the,
You're
with
allowed
what's
to.
we literally just saw two Jews get shot dead at a fucking Jewish event because of all of the rhetoric. So yes, they are taking it a little bit like, seriously when people start openly supporting terrorists,
Aren't
and
you
they will
aren't
give
you
them due
making the
process.
same assumptions though? I can say, how do you know that's why he did it? He has a manifesto, and he's not saying Hasan told me to do this. He's not saying this is because of this. He says specifically, and you don't have to believe this, by the way, but he's saying this is
No,
because of what Israel is doing, right? So like,
I
if that's
understand what
what,
you're saying.
right? So like, you can't say,
My
oh, he did
argument
this
is my
because of
argument
that.
is my argument is right. If this government, right, has
Mhm.
made it a priority to put a focus on people that are supporting terror organizations, or even at the appearance of supporting terror organizations, then they might arrest some people that aren't actually supporting a terrorist organization.
Do you think they
Maybe
can
maybe they are just
investigate
exercising.
that before without having them under like in prison? Like you can absolutely pursue and find
Well,
out whether
I
or not
mean,
these people are truly doing it without having them locked
we could
up.
argue.
And that's
Yeah, we could
and
argue.
I really have to say this though, real quick, last thing. Donald Trump and the administration is saying, "Hey, we're coming after you because of what you're
Yeah,
doing, because of the things you're saying." This is not like a, "Ooh, I mean, I'm kind of guessing." Like if it was that vague, I'd probably be on your side of, "Well, we're not 100% sure why this is happening." But they're being pretty
no, no, no.
explicit in the intimidation tactics, whether it's with the ICE stuff or with the Palestine stuff. They're very, very explicit with this. I don't think
I
this is
think that
like I don't get why they're doing this. It's pretty,
I think that
unless
they
they're
should.
lying about it.
Also,
I
also,
think
if
they
Trump
should
cared about
intimidate.
any of this, why did he excuse a multiple January 6 rioters that were charged with explicit crimes
What
against things like
aboutism?
cops?
I
It's
don't
not,
like the
it's,
what
this is,
aboutism.
sorry, this isn't a whataboutism because you're stating that Trump, for example, believes in some certain thing, that he's concerned about supporting terrorism. And that might be the reason why he breaches on the First Amendment here.
J6s weren't
However,
terrorists.
he
And legally,
explicitly
they were.
sidestepped the judicial court's findings to pardon and excuse people found criminally responsible for attacking police, right? So the issue is, how do you square this circle? Because I don't
Very
really
easily.
understand it. Sure.
It's a false equivalency. You're trying to make the equivalency of the people who protested and were mixed in with some bad actors that were vandalizing, assaulting, rioting on January 6th. I've always said, I've been very clear about this. The people on January 6th that got violent are scumbags who deserve to be locked up. The problem is their due process was actually violated. And when Trump had to pardon everybody, there was so many people. Enrique Tarrio wasn't even there. He literally was not there. He got a 22-year sentence for incitement of violence when he wasn't even at
Misfit,
January
he
6th.
planned it out and he said, make no mistake, we did this," and had like instructions on how to
Yeah.
overthrow the government.
Yeah, but that's his freedom of speech.
No,
Just like the
no,
argument
no,
that
it's
you just
not. He
made.
was planning
No.
treason. That's actually
And
very
and
specifically legally
But then
like you
why
can't
is
do
it
that.
her freedom of
okay.
speech to say that she supports Palestine? I don't
But
understand how this
because
is his freedom
one's
of speech
well,
but
no, no,
it's not
no.
hers.
Like I said, if she just supports Palestine, which I think that the evidence showed she did, then we're all in agreement. But like I said, I think that this administration should be maybe being a little bit more threatening to people that are going to support Hamas, right? If you're going to support Hamas, now the de facto government of Gaza is Hamas, right? That is a fact. They are the government of Gaza, right? So when you say,
Sort of,
I
but they're not a state. So no, they're also kind of
exactly,
not,
well,
just to be
they're,
clear.
I mean, they were voted in.
Can I read you?
So
Can I read you
Yeah, but
something
they're
about
not as
Tario
big.
Misfit real quick? Can I read you like the trial facts?
I'm
Because
not even a big fan. I'm not even a big fan
well,
of Enrique
no, don't
Tarrio.
backpedal because I think you said he shouldn't
No,
have
no,
been
no.
locked up for
It's
22 years. Well, this is one of the most explicit. Like you
22
incited,
years.
committed treason against the government. Like this is like very explicit, and he was convicted by a jury,
Mhm.
right? Like this is. Let me just read this to you and tell me when to stop if you
In
think this is
DC.
ridiculous. Yes. Okay. Tario had convened a Ministry of Self-Defense to coordinate Proud Boys' leadership on January 6th. The chats showed that Tario, stationed in Baltimore hotel room, not in D.C., he's in Baltimore, encouraged the Proud Boys as they attacked the Capitol. On January 6th, he told his followers on social media, do what must be done. And later, in an encrypted group chat, he directed other Proud Boys to do it again. In another message, he wrote, make no mistake, we did this. Prosecutors also included evidence that Tario had discussed with associates a plan to have a large crowd in Washington storm government buildings, a scheme that the Proud Boys dubbed 1776 Returns, in which the Winter Palace was used as an apparent code for the U.S. Capitol. And this goes on, but this is like very explicit incitement, not just incitement, like I am planning out to overthrow the U.S. government. Like this is not a oopsie doopsie, we locked you up for 22 years. This is like one of the most open and shut cases.
It's the same exact argument that not you, sorry, didn't want to lump you in, that
My side,
other
sure.
people your side would make against the fucking BLM riots. No, the BLM riots, right? Like, so when you have the BLM riots in 2020,
can we keep it focused on? I know you don't like whataboutism. Can we keep it focused on like Ozturk or these people that are being locked up for the Palestinian stuff? Because if they were planning to the same degree as Enrico was, I would agree with you. If they were saying let's overthrow the U.S. government to stop the Israel-Gaza thing, that's open and shut. But that's not what's happening.
My argument is Enrique Tarrio did not get a fair trial. He got a ridiculous sentence. Did he do something wrong? Probably. I'm not a big fan of Enrique Tarrio. He probably shouldn't have said some of the things he said, but 22 years
for plotting to overthrow the government with explicit plans and coordination and saying, yes, we absolutely did this.
Everything that you just said that he said was pretty vague. I mean, and you could call it stochastic terrorism.
He had plans to storm the Capitol government buildings. Like, let's go in here with guns and the Proud Boys and overthrow the government. Not.
I'd have to see.
That's why I wanted to read it to you, because if you don't know this, I understand. But you should go read the trial.
You didn't read me anything specifically where he said guns and he said violence and he said kill or anything like that.
Go ahead and look it up then. I promise you.
I will. And if that's the case, right? I'm not even going to concede that it was. Hypothetically,
can I just ask you?
I would say he should probably be charged with something. I think 22 years is probably crazy.
Okay, so if he was writing in such a way that you think is like incitement to some degree, you would want him charged in the same 100%. Way that if this girl had written something inciting, she should be charged. But you agree that she did not, and this was a major blunder of the courts in this case.
Correct. Yeah, no, I think that what happened was she went through due process. The due process worked out, and I think that everything. I mean,
do you
look,
think that her
here's the
free
thing.
Speech, I'm asking you if you think that her free speech supporting Hamas should be protected to the extent that you think people who maybe want to overthrow.
She didn't support Hamas. I just want to
be protected.
If she supported
Hamas, she did not support Hamas, and
she did not. I'm asking a hypothetical new person.
Okay, sure.
If a person supports a foreign domestic terrorist organization and supports them to the point where they are trying to, I would say, maybe get people to join into that cause, I do not think that's free speech. I think
fly over.
Like if you say, I love Hamas. Hamas is great. I want Hamas to kill all the Jews. I don't think that's free speech, right? But only because it's a foreign terrorist organization that chants death to America. We should have a limit on the type of rhetoric that people in this country who enjoy our freedoms should be able to espouse. Not a restriction on their First Amendment right, but when you take it to a point where, like you said, I would say that's stochastic terrorism, and it's a stochastic terrorism in a form of support for a actual terrorist organization. So I think that should be the line. I think we were talking earlier about where's the clear line. I think the clear line should be like if you say something like I love Al Qaeda, right? I guess you're free to say that. If you say if you say I want Al Qaeda to return, I think we should all join Al Qaeda. If I think that Al Qaeda is the should come to the West, I think you know what I'm saying. Like I think that there should be a common sense factor in that. So if this girl just wrote an article supporting Palestine, obviously she shouldn't have been like restricted from doing that. But I think
Misfit,
that
what do you think then with the people coming out post this Elias thing happening and saying, because he did chant Free Palestine when he was locked up, saying Free Palestine, this is not from the River to the Sea, just saying Free Palestine is now this like call to terrorism, this is anti-Semitic, like, or Kyla, I guess you have a thought on this?
yeah, people
No,
are taking it far.
with my camera.
Okay.
People are definitely
I'm trying
taking
to
it
figure
a
out your
little too
line.
far.
I'm trying to figure out your line and making sure that they're consistent between.
Well,
like,
that's
the
my line
J6ers.
is the same. My line is the same, where it is a little bit subjective, right? With the J6ers, I think that out of the 1,100 cases, I don't think that a majority of them. There were jurors that were coming in and saying that they predetermined the guilt of some of these people before they even walked into the building. DC has a 95% Joe Biden voter demographic, right? I don't think that these people could get a fair trial in DC, and I think that a lot of these people were tried in DC. There was a lot of circumventing of the processes. These people, like I know a girl, Isabella DeLuca, who was tried and who was subpoenaed by the FBI, and she caught charges because she touched a table. Right, that table was later used by somebody else, and they threw it at a cop.
Not to interrupt. I just want to be clear that, like, obviously you and I are going to agree that there's probably a lot of the J6ers that were like prosecuted and looked into that were probably unfair, right? It was a very
And then there's people like Jake Lang that should still be in jail. Like there
That's
are people
fine.
that
I'm asking for your line of credulity. I'm just trying to figure out what your line is and whether that varies, whether it's a J6er or like a
No.
pro-Palestine person.
No. What I was trying.
I'm not sure that it is, because one of the distinctions that it seems like you're making is that if they're talking in speech in support of like a foreign terrorist group, then we can be more critical of their language than if they're maybe talking in speech of overthrowing their own government, such as the J6ers.
Of course, because that's how they have already been designated a foreign terrorist organization. That's a very objective thing, right? It's like it's complete. Like, I'm talking legally. Like legally in this country, we have designated Hamas as a foreign terrorist
Did
organization.
we designate Proud Boys as a terrorist group though, or something? Like,
Did the Biden administration do that?
I am actually not sure whether they were actually officially.
Well, these were the people that Enrico Tarrio were coordinating.
No, you can.
Also, real quick, the DeLuca person you mentioned, yes, she did touch a table, but she helped steal it, and it was then used to attack people, which is a little not so vague.
Look,
you know,
look, she essentially. I mean, listen, this is her side of the story. She said that that she was with people who stole the table. Okay, she was with people who stole the table. Then she was filmed or took a picture where she was touching the table. That table was then thrown at a cop or something like that. But she was charged with assault. And it's like, okay, that's a little much, right? And she can go through her whole due process, but here's the deal. Because of all of that ridiculousness and because of some of the things that happened, and there were definitely shady things that happened, Trump had to pardon everybody, right? Because he basically had. Well, he kind of have to. Well, in my opinion, he kind of did.
Have to.
Well, yeah, Misfit. Let me give you credence, Misfit. I know you just said, and I believe you truly believe this. And I think this is a good thing. You can look at these cases and say this person definitely does not deserve to go to jail, but this person who like beat up a cop probably does. Like you have. If you have that discretion, Why can't Trump have that discretion?
No, 100%. And Jake Lang should still be in jail. Jake Lang is on film trying to swing a baseball bat at a fucking police officer.
Right, so why couldn't Trump do that? Like what you're doing right now, which is a perfectly reasonable case by case. This person was too violent, this person wasn't.
Because of the situation where it's 1,100 cases, going through them one by one, reading all of them, making that determination. I think it was.
But he has people, right? Yeah, he has.
Can do that.
And they can say, look, President Trump, these people were the most violent. I don't think you should pardon them, and these people were, and they can collectivize this because they were able to.
I'll say this. I'll let you respond in a second, but I'll say this. I'll make this claim. If Trump can't do that, he should not be in the position of power that he holds.
No, I think
that I could do that.
No, I think that mass pardons work this way.
I could put those in my I could put those in my Discord right now. I could put all 11 cases, and by the end of the week, I could have a full list of people who were violent and who were not. And if Trump cannot do that,
didn't Jimmy Carter do the same thing with the Vietnam vets?
Maybe, but this is whataboutism. I would probably
I
disagree then.
think the issue is, first of all, whataboutism. Second of all, I think if it's the case that Jimmy Carter did this, I'm sure that Soypill and Wick would be similarly critical if you just carte blanche, like excused people when it's like, okay, well, some of these veterans were like raping children and other veterans were like doing war.
I wasn't using whataboutism as an argument. I'm using it to just give a reference that in the past, presidents have mass pardoned groups because the overall like going through case by case by case by case is too difficult. So I think that Trump made that decision. Now, could he hypothetically have gone through each and every individual case? Yes, he could have. Maybe he should have, but he didn't. Okay. And I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't think it's that ridiculous because I mean, look, if there were like I said, I think Jake Lang is one of the biggest pieces of shit on the planet, right? The guy votes like me, he thinks like me, but he's a piece of shit, right? I think he should still be in jail. So I'm just as disappointed as you are. However, I understand why Trump did it because it's like, okay, we got to get a lot of shit done. We're about to start this administration. We got the next 4 years and we only got 4 years to do it. Let's just fucking pardon everybody. Get this off of our plate. Maybe you don't like it, but that's what happened.
Well, can I ask this? Because
we don't like it because I think the burden of responsibility for your leader should be higher than just being like, but I have pet projects I want to get done, so I guess we just got to go let criminals.
And again, not to do.
Nobody would ever be fine with Biden doing this. Ever.
Yes, you were because he pardoned 8,000 fucking people.
I disagreed with that, by the way, Miss. I thought that this was if you look at the list of he did it in a sweeping generalization where a lot of people that probably shouldn't have been pardoned were pardoned based on this very strict thing. And like, I don't like that either. But I think you should also be able to say Trump didn't do a good job here. He should absolutely have kept these people.
Like it.
Okay, but you said it was the only thing he could do, and I don't think that's true.
No, I said it's what he did, and I understand it. I would have preferred him going through case by case. However, not to use whataboutism, Biden literally just pardoned a bunch of people, and Kayla was like, he wouldn't have done that. Yes, he did. He did it more than any president in modern history besides Jimmy Carter.
Hold on. You're putting words in my mouth. I never said that Biden would have never done that. I said if Biden had done that, you would have been like the right would have been in an uproar.
And it sounds like you were, yeah.
You were,
yeah.
Right. So
I mean, what was it?
So you should be an uproar against Trump for it. That's all I'm saying.
Consistent here, right? I'm saying like this carte blanche pardoning, not a good thing.
I don't think any president should. I don't think any president should do it. Agreed. But
okay. Well, Misfit, just to be clear, you did say he had to. You said he had no choice, essentially, because of the circumstances.
If I said that, I misspoke.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, but then then to round this back up to what the panel was about,
and I just want to make it clear we are getting to the point where we're going to be wrapping up soon. So
but maybe this is a way to come full circle, Wick. But so what Enrique Tarrio did was very much, at the very least, stochastic, if not even further than this, where he is explicitly planning the attack of these government buildings. Would you not say that this at least rises to the level of stochastic terrorism, even though he was not there, and that he probably shouldn't be pardoned, right?
I think that Enrique Tarrio may or should have probably faced some charges, but I think that he should have had a fair trial. This is the problem with I think many of the J6 cases. I think that a fair trial should be fair in regards to if it's a political trial. I think that you should be in a courtroom that is at least maybe somewhat moderate, like somewhere where you're going to have a jury selection where you have a potential 50-50 jury that doesn't hate you because of how you vote. So that's my argument. It's not whether or not Enrique Tarrio did something wrong. Maybe he did. But if you put him in a DC,
the thing about law, just real quick, like you're usually, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but as I understand it, they charge you where you did the crime in the jurisdiction in which you did the crime, and the jurisdiction in which they did the crime was DC. That was the process that we have.
And
so,
they said that, and then you have
these trials. I just want to let me finish. And I'll let you respond. Right. The idea that these trials weren't fair. Right. Both their defense got to help pick the jury.
Yeah, jury selection goes through both. Yeah.
Hold up, but change of venues exist for this exact reason, and they were all denied. Right? A change of venues exists because of this exact reason, and every single one of them was denied. And that's not right, right? You have to take into account these people are in DC, 95% Biden. They are clearly Trump supporters, and they're going to be in front of a jury that statistically is going to be 95% Biden. So
okay,
I think that a change of venue
supporter committed a crime in a 95% red
They should be able to
county,
move.
I
Yeah.
should be able to be moved simply because I'm a
100%.
Biden supporter. I don't think I just
1000%.
I don't agree
You
with
should
that.
Just to
1000%
clarify,
be.
I just want to clarify some things for those because I didn't know much about the Biden pardons or whatever. He only pardoned 80 people. What he did is he basically got rid of a number of charges for like low charges like marijuana. He also blanket pardoned LGBTQ service members who were removed from the military due to their gender identity or sexual orientation, right? So like these are not the same thing as going to genuinely convicted people who assault police and then blanket pardoning them.
It was
This is looking at
thousands.
like
Wait,
They had
simple,
commutations.
small. It was 4,165 people in total during his 4 years, and it was specifically small marijuana possession under federal
Yeah,
law.
that was
and
6,577.
Yeah,
Uh,
Kyla, I
what
don't
I'm
want to like
seeing
push back
here
super hard
is-
because I'm not super informed, but I know that there were a few people lumped into this that were like, serial like molesters. Like there were some.
Yep.
Maybe I'm the victim of
He
right wing
pardoned- he-
propaganda here,
he
but
pardoned it-
I know
no,
there
no,
were
no,
like
he-
a couple of these people where it's like, okay, this probably
Sure,
person was lumped in
sure.
because
pardoned
they had
a-
similar
he-
charges.
And I
That's
would
it.
just, I would
He
just be
pardoned
the
a
first to
Chinese
grant
spy
that there might
pedophile.
be. You will probably find for me a couple people here that'll be like, yeah, Biden should have been careful enough to not like pardon these people,
Yeah.
but let's not equate these types of pardons, which is about like simple marijuana possession, LGBTQ service,
No,
and 80 other pardons, to the blanket release of January 6 rioters with express found
But-
due process, like criminal
on.
charges against them, like attacking
While
the
it
police.
while it was 6,577 marijuana pardons, right, blanket pardons. It was 2,500 nonviolent offenses, and then there was like the 80 pardons. There was a bunch of others, but he literally pardoned a Chinese spy who was convicted of pedophilia. So there's
Yeah, something like
people
that.
in there. There's people
If
in
that's
there.
not good. I'm never going to defend
good.
that. But
Exactly.
what I'm saying,
And I
need
won't
you to
defend.
really-
And I won't
hold on,
defend Jake
hold on,
Lang.
Misfit.
So we're in
Hold
the
on,
same
Misfit.
boat.
Well,
Well,
no, because
yeah, you kinda
the point
did.
that I'm making, the point that I'm making here is that what we're doing is we're equating Biden's blanket pardons to Trump's, right? The issue with Trump's blanket pardons, in my position, isn't that there's like a couple of individuals that are really bad and that's it. My issue with the Trump pardons is that a large number of those people did explicitly very bad crimes that I think all of us don't like attacking police officers and breaking into government buildings and stuff like that.
Problem
right?
is that
There
they
are-
didn't. A lot of the crimes were. Hold on, I'm being serious. There were very bad actors. There were people like Jake Lang. And if what you say about Enrique Tarrio is true, I'm not going to defend him. What I'm saying is there was many people out of the 1,100 people that were arrested and given these crazy sentences. Some of them vandalism. Some of them were just walking through, like Jake Chansley, the guy, the shaman guy with the face paint. He's weird. I don't really like him either. However, the sentence that he got when he was walked through the Capitol by Capitol police officers, and it's on camera, where they literally were opening doors for him, they were shaking his hand, they were doing all this, and then he goes to jail for like a year and a half. Come on, you can't sit there with a straight face and tell me that these people on J6 were treated fairly under the justice system. They weren't, and that's why I understand why Trump did the blanket pardon, because it's just too much.
I don't. I
Jacob
think it-
Chansley,
the issue
Jacob
is that so
Chansley,
many-
Jacob Chansley is a weirdo. He is
They
not a
would
criminal.
say-
Kyla finish, and then we gotta wrap up. Kyla, respond.
I don't even know where we're at anymore. Basically,
Well, we
a lot
got
of
there.
lefties. Well, a lot of lefties would basically say that a lot of the people with like simple marijuana possessions were treated unfairly in justice because it shouldn't be illegal, and probably a large portion of them were black as well, right? So it's like
But it is illegal.
Yeah, but a lot of people would argue that it probably shouldn't be, and that they're not getting fair trials because they're getting federal charges for very small marijuana, like
Illegal's
charges.
illegal. That's the thing.
All right,
I mean, I know
would you
we-
say
I know
that
we-
about January 6th?
Okay.
Breaking
at a-
into the
we're at
White
an
House
impasse.
is illegal, but here
Hey,
we are.
we got it. I do have things to do tonight, unfortunately, so we got to wrap it up.
Oh,
but
we're not in
gang,
Portland. Okay.
gang, yeah. This has been I've enjoyed this discussion. I'd love to have you on again to discuss January 6th specifically at some point. That would be interesting. But for now, we have to say goodbye. I'm going to give every one of these people closing statements where they can tell where you can find them. I have links to all their stuff in my description where you can go, you can click those links, you can follow them, you can subscribe to them, whatever have you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for coming. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking to an ex-child terrorist, someone who was part of a Maoist revolutionary organization in America.
Are you talking about Shenandoah?
Yes, trained specifically to overthrow the government.
Oh God.
I want to pick his brain. It's gonna be fun. So tune in tomorrow for that. On Wednesday, we're gonna have a debate on should the U.S. increase foreign spending to foreign governments. And on either Thursday or Friday, I'm going to be debating P.F. Young on the woke right. He says it's not real. I disagree. And that should be fun. Okay, with that said, we're going to start with Soy Pill. We're going to let Misfit have the last word. Soy Pill, close us out.
Yeah, so just on the topic of stochastic terrorism, I fully agree, I think, with most of the panel here, which is like, there's a very hard way to show that this is illegal. We have a way to show that you are inciting violence, and if you're treading up into that line, I don't think we should be starting to, like, push the government's ability to determine what is not legal to say. I'm really scared of what they're doing with that 86 thing. I'm scared of what they're doing with saying, like, hey, Free Palestine is now an anti-Semitic, like, genocidal chant. I don't think the people should be prosecuted or anything like that for those statements. But I do agree with Kyla, and I guess Misfit agreed with this to a degree, which is we should be policing our own side when we see stuff like what I think Hasan is doing, what Noah Samson is doing, and these, I don't own these people, but I'm on the left, all right, and so they're on the same side. We disagree on a lot of stuff, but we also agree on a lot of stuff, and it's incumbent upon the people who are more likely to listen to you to call out the behavior that you think is actually going to make the world a worse place. So I think we should call out stochastic terrorism, and I unfortunately think it is just going to be a case-on-case basis. There's lines that we say like, yeah, this seems like it's treading over, and I can use an example to paint that vague kind of bubble, but it's going to be different every time. I'm someone who has very often repeated the Norm Macdonald, call me crazy, but I think everyone in this story should die, line, but I don't think that's an incitement to violence. However, some people might see it that way, and so I think we need to be very careful about what we say is stochastic terrorism, but we also need to be policing our side, making sure it doesn't happen. Thanks for listening. It's been great. I had a lot of fun.
Always a pleasure, Soy Pill. Find him and his channel blowing up. He's going to the moon. Thanks for being here and
Thanks,
taking
man.
time with us little people. Kyla, not so erudite.
Yeah, my name is notsoErudite. You can find me everywhere under notsoErudite. Erudite is spelled Erudite. I don't know. We didn't talk that much about stochastic terrorism. In telling people, walking people all the way up to doing violence to others, and then leaving it there for them to think about it. Probably not good. There are obviously times where we might be okay with it, but it's usually going to be like in a more military way. There should probably be some social ramifications, and I don't know. I think that it would be reasonable to potentially like the court look at somebody like Nick Fuentes as in like a constant state of like provocation, and like engage in that. If somebody like happens to assault him or something like that, which would be wrong. It would be bad to assault him. But I think that there needs to be some level of like social responsibility for the things, particularly like lying. I just don't know how to do it in a way that can be applied in a way that will achieve justice by applying so. But I think the internet is having too large of ramifications to just like be like, well, it's too hard to do, so I guess we'll just keep on yelling at our own, and that's it. Like that doesn't feel like a salient answer to me. We need something more. I don't know what it is exactly, but I'm open to ideas.
Well, thank you for being here. Check her out, Not So Erudite. I have links to her stuff. Hopefully she streams more, and hopefully she'll come back on my show a little bit more, and we can have some fun panels together.
You gotta
Last,
invite
but
me.
certainly not least.
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny because I didn't actually realize that this whole podcast was going to be about stochastic terrorism. I think Wick was like, I want to continue the conversation we had, but it's a
little.
yeah, it's a great conversation, and I'm sorry that if we didn't spend more time on it, but I think I disagree a little bit with Kayla about trying to Kyla, sorry. Kyla, about, like how we prosecute it. I think Nick Fuentes is a piece of shit, but I think that the best way to deal with Nick Fuentes is for people like me on the right, a MAGA person, to start calling him out, just like Soy Pill said. I think that the best way to combat this problem with stochastic terrorism is housekeeping, general hygiene. If you don't call out your own side, if you are constantly just either being in denial or ignoring the bad actors on your own side. And this does happen on the left and the right. We have already established that Nick Fuentes is bad, Stu Peters is bad, the Myron Gaines is the Jake Shields, all of these crazy, anti-Israel people. Like Candace Owens, Ian Carroll, like there's a whole list of people, and I'm calling them out regularly. What I don't see, and maybe it's happening and I'm just not seeing it. What I see less is on the left, the people calling out the bad actors on their side. I think that they want to turn a blind eye to the people that incited this fucking terrorist who shot two people just because they were at a Jewish museum. And it just so happens that his gun jammed, which is the only reason why it didn't turn into a mass casualty event. And I think that if we at least agree, which we have, which I'm so thankful for. Actually, I really want to say I appreciate this conversation because we were able to at least agree that that's a good thing to call out the bad behavior. And that's how I see solving this issue. I don't see making laws about speech as ever a solution. You have Weimar Germany, you have plenty of historical evidence that anytime speech is regulated, it just leads to back alley, underground, resistance. So let people talk, but talk louder and make sure you're saying the right things to combat their wrong things. So
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you for being here. Links to his stuff is in my channel. You can check him out. Again, don't worry. If you want to see more people calling out the left when they do bad things, you should watch more of my show. Okay, that said, tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. Wait, bye-bye, everyone. Say bye-bye. Bye. Okay.
All right, guys. Misfit. I couldn't tell, like Connor said, whether or not he was being bad faith or genuinely is just that silly. Okay, hold on. I'm calling Kyla. We're having our own little conversation here. Give me a second. Hey, what's up? That was a fun conversation. I think you and I could have had a much more interesting one. And I hope we can now because Misfit's like so off the deep end in some of these things that yeah.
It's tough because I think I don't know. He's just odd. I can't tell. I can't tell if he's just got like really really inconsistent beliefs about things or if he just like can't communicate very well.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to know. Yeah, okay, let's talk about actual things that we should care about because I basically don't think like this idea of like calling the people out on our own side will do it. It's like I don't know, like that's what I saw like most liberals doing to leftists for like 4 years and that was completely ineffectual. So the idea that like
and same with what he said, right? Like he was like, well, I'm calling out Nick Fuentes. I was like, okay, great. Like he's getting super popular. This doesn't seem to be fixing it. So I agree. There should be something more egregious, but like what, right? Because we both don't think it should be legal, but like more strict private platform like deregulation or deplatforming, rules. Like
it just doesn't seem to have worked either, right? Like I feel like what happened from like 2016 to 2020 is the left just like deplatformed every voice that we didn't really like, and then we're like, look, guys, we did it, we won. And then like Elon Musk bought Twitter, and we were like, oh fuck.
But
Like,
right,
they
he
all-
re-platformed them, right? It had to, like, I think if he hadn't bought Twitter and he hadn't brought Nick and Alex Jones and these people back in the limelight, I think like these people kind of do go away for the most part. It's not gone and it doesn't like complete, but it absolutely shrinks their size. I think it works to an extent.
It works to an extent. The problem is that they go underground and then they echo chamber each other, and then they come out and they're way more extreme than they ever were. Like I don't think the Wilson crew would really be able to exist if we hadn't like made these people go underground and then they like pop up with like their like Eastern Orthodoxy, like I don't even know what labels they like all apply. There's a really interesting study that looks at Reddit to Gab transfer when they started banning incels, right? I'm sure you're familiar with it.
Oh, I was
right?
on those
60%
incel forums. They were fun.
So
Not for
60%
my
of
own
the
gain.
Reddit users went from Reddit when banned to Gab because they could. So
Yep.
like yeah, there was a loss. The problem is that once they were on Gab, the language around it was significantly more extreme and got more extreme over the next like 2 to 3 years.
Right.
And I think we're kind of paying the ramifications of this. Like I don't think that in 2016 we would have heard too many conservatives being like pretty openly like
Repeal the 19th.
weird about black people.
Or
Like
yeah, or that.
weird about black people, right? Where it's just like you're kind of like I feel like we're like 2 steps away from calling for lynchings. Like I feel like we're getting real close.
Well, yeah,
Um,
you're not the black fatigue comments on Twitter right now are like pretty fucking scary, unironically. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
here's the thing though. It's like, okay, because right now, then let's just assume that's 100% true. I'm not saying you're lying, but like, let's say like if you do suppress and deplatform, they are inevitably going to come back, and it will inevitably be worse, no matter what. So that's not the option. Then what really do you do? Because right now, I can call them out as much as I want, but we do have like the Andrew Wilson squad that's going to advocate for these horrible, horrible societies. We can't deplatform them because, as you said, that'll make them more radical. If we call them out, they don't give a shit because they have enough of a following that the ideas don't work. And I firmly don't believe that the marketplace of ideas works enough to convince enough people. It's just not good enough. I mean, we have good debaters, and that's great, and you do convert some people, but especially when you have bad people on your side. I think if Hasan goes up against like an Andrew Wilson, he's going to make more people agree with Andrew because Andrew will make him look dumb. And so is there really an option there? Especially because last thing, I'll let you respond, but I'm reading this book on fascism now, and one of the like fascist like tools is to put all of these ideas into the same marketplace and say all of these are equal, and we have to be able to allow all of them. When like it's ridiculous to say like I would never go to a university and say, hey, you don't have enough flat Earth professors, right? Like because it should be laughed out of the room.
yeah,
But unfortunately now we are in a situation where it's like, hey, Wick, bring on the people who think women shouldn't have rights, which is ridiculous. Like these people shouldn't even be taken seriously, and yet they are. And I think that does bolster them. I think not letting them on these panels is better. But what do you think?
I'm not compelled that deplatforming worked, right? I think there's personal levels of deplatforming that should be burning. So like Nick Fuentes, I probably would never debate Nick Fuentes, not because I'm opposed to like platforming him ontologically, but I think I don't know a lot about the JQ conspiracy theory. I'm also not going to research it. I'm not super interested in
Right.
digging a ton into like JQ stuff, but Nick Fuentes pretty knowingly lies a lot. That's been my experience of people who have talked to him. And I think the only people who should even consider talking to him are people who can make him look really silly, but also conversely can look really cool. Because
Yes.
we've moved out of this era where like the skeptics won against the young earthers by being just logically more sound, right? It seems like aesthetic has become really, really important and really compelling, right? Like how much of Hassan's fans like him because
Because he's hot.
they're well, yeah, like literally he's hot or they want to be him, right?
Yeah.
Probably a large portion, like probably genuinely a large portion, and they like that he makes communism look cool, right?
Wick is
Which is
defending
another
in my chat the women question is valid. It's good to platform that. But wait, this is exactly to your point, Kyla, which is yes, if you can have a person that can go on there and emasculate these people and make their ideas look stupid, then yeah, I would prefer that to deplatforming completely. But what you're seeding in that, what you're burying is by them existing, that means we must, if we don't deplatform, we must have that. If we don't have that answer, now we're ceding all the ground to them, right? If we don't have someone who can make them look stupid, and there have been times where I think these people, go up against, like, let's say you debated Nick Fuentes and you didn't know the JQ stuff, you're right. Like, people, you're smart enough not to, because you're like, I'm not going to research it. A lot of people fucking aren't. The Xander Hall, Lawrence Southern debate I heard was like, famously like, oh, this is really bad for the left because you make this right person look really smart. And so what you're doing is you're creating like this need to have the perfect answer to their thing because you're allowing them in these spaces. I would say, if I was Wick, I would say, look, I'm not going to give credence to the fact that your opinion is just as valid as this opinion. It's not. It's fucking ridiculous. I'm not going to have it talked about. Now, if they get as big as Andrew Wilson and now they're on Piers Morgan and they're like, oh shit, like this is a movement, that's when you have to address it. You can't, deplatforming won't work then. But if they're the smaller people, yeah, fuck them. Like, don't give them the time of day. Don't pretend like everyone's opinion is all equal and then we have to give time to all of them.
Sure, but by deplatforming all these people and basically making the retarded right people, super dumb idiots, go underground and like galvanize and like seethe and froth at the mouth, right? Now, we have a bunch of Silicon Valley tech bros who we're the ones that deplatform them, first of all. joining them,
Yep.
which is crazy,
Yeah.
in part probably because they understand that they are stupid masses that can be moved without a lot of evidence or anything other than just like saying shit, right? But also on top of this, you have a left that is a deranged. Okay. I think a lot of bad leftist ideas would have been in part balanced by just like the right being like, hey, like let's maybe chill out on some of this like really crazy shit.
Mhm.
Because we're immediately seeing policy now that right ideas are way more popular. Suddenly the left is willing to talk about like, okay, well, like let's talk about like kids and HRT and like when is the reasonable time. Like all of a sudden the left is capable of like reasonality over this, of being like, well, it's probably valuable to treat trans kids as trans kids and treat them well, but also like you're right, we probably shouldn't just be carte blanche, just transing all of the kids, right? Which I think is a bad argument. But what we have is essentially the left that is disconnected from normal people and also can't even engage in these ideas. Like the fact that nobody on the left even knows how to deal with somebody who says that women shouldn't be able to vote because men are the enforcement arm, question mark, right? That like nobody knows how to deal with that. No
Right.
one. Sam
But
Cedar got like crushed on meta ethics by like some random schmuck.
oh, you
That's
talking
not
about the
good.
Jubilee one?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is like I think most people would look at that, not you and me, because we're terminally online, and not think he got crushed because he's just like, I'm not even engaging with this idea that for the most part is so outside of the Overton window. And that's why, yeah, I understand like Nick Fuentes comes into prominence in partially because people are like, I want to debate you because you're so dumb. But when you like, yeah, then you have to come up with the arguments like, 2000s, 2010s, people didn't have an argument. Why is racism bad? Because you didn't have to argue it. It was just a given in society. Yeah, racism is bad. But now you've got someone who's educated on the history and explaining why being racist has these positive effects. And now this is what I'm talking about. We now have the onus to study up and research why is racism bad and now explain it to people again, which is good that we can, but we shouldn't have to. And they're only able to do that when the institutions and the people that have these platforms say, oh yeah, your idea is valid. Let's hear what you have to say about this. And I think there is credence to just saying, yeah, keep them underground. Like if they don't come back, that's better. Unfortunately, if you're right, if this is an inevitable pendulum swing, I guess that's not the answer. But like, then where do we go forward? How do we police stochastic terrorism if just calling it out doesn't work? If deplatforming it doesn't work? Legally, like, which I think you said you didn't want to do, like it just seems like there's no like right answer here. And
I'd be super down to do it legally. I don't think that
Oh,
there's
okay.
a functional way on stochastic terrorism alone to do it because, like I said, there isn't a criteria that I think I'd comfortably apply to like Noah Sampson. I'm going to use him because I think he's the most extreme recent example of this behavior.
Sure.
That I would maybe not as be willing to apply to like Destiny with the Kyle Rittenhouse comments of like gunning everyone down on the streets, right? It's like, okay, well, like, is that stochastic terrorism, right? So I'm trying to figure out what are like the lines by which we like fit these out. And I don't know if we can over stochastic terrorism alone, which is why, and I could be wrong. My thought was, what if you make it so that there is a higher like if you're a content creator, that doesn't mean that you get all the liberties. Like sometimes certain liberties get removed from you from certain roles that you occupy in society, right? And this is kind of a trade for like making lots of money and having lots of power,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if there should be as much liberty for Nick Fuentes to know that if he like walks around and comes across a Jew that gets really angry at him and starts talking to him, that like the court won't weigh in everything that Nick Fuentes has said about Jews up until this point in the court case of deciding how serious the assault is. Like, would there be some level of like, because when you're face to face, right? When you're at a bar and Nick Fuentes is saying this shit, the reality is like you're gonna go get punched. If Nick Fuentes is walking around a black neighborhood and like looked a black person in the eye and said, "What's up, N-word?"
Yeah.
He's gonna get assaulted, right?
Right.
So he knows there's like this fear of the Lord. But the reality is like there isn't that for online behavior. And that doesn't mean that I want assault for Nick Fuentes, but I
Right.
want some level of like going, Nick Fuentes is at all times basically walking around in black neighborhoods, looking people dead in the eye and saying the N word, right?
Right.
And I don't want to treat him in court the same as like the mentally disabled homeless guy stumbling around being like, N
Just
word,
slurs,
F
yeah, yeah.
slur, like just like screaming random shit. I don't want to treat these two things the same. And I don't know if right now his like stochastic terrorism would be included if like a Jew punched him in the face. I still think the Jew did something wrong by punching him in the face,
Right.
but it's a lot less wrong than punching a random person in the face.
So it's essentially not applying a legal standard to stochastic terrorism and punishing it directly, but however, take into account that platformers and content creators do have a higher standard and expectation. In the same way, you and I probably morally agree, like obviously these people have a greater responsibility to not incite this sort of thing. If something legal, that which we're not changing, were to happen, that would be weighed in that legal case where I feel like it kind of already is. I don't know if there's like a legal language for this, but like this is like the circumstances that a jury would look at or a judge would look at and say like, look, you've been calling for the death of Jews for 5 to 6 years, and finally you've now committed a crime. This is going to weigh into whether or not we think you meant to, I don't know, kill this like Jewish guy when you punched him or like whatever happened, right? Like is this any different from what we're doing now? And regardless of what that is, like a second follow-up once you answer that, what do you and I do, right? Because we're not changing the legal system. Maybe we can advocate for it, but like how do you and I make Noah Samson or Hasan Piker not do this shit other than just call it out, which apparently isn't working?
Yeah, it's super not working. I think first of all we have to like reserve terrorist for terrorists, and I think that like for example, if somebody's an interpreter and they go to Gaza to work for Hamas, but just to interpret, to communicate like maybe propaganda on social media, is that person a terrorist? Like most of us would say.
No, yeah, they're just doing the job. Okay.
But they are a terrorist, right? Like I think legally they would be a valid military target.
Just for interpreting, really?
I think if they were working with Hamas, yeah, I think they would explicitly be considered, because if they're part of Hamas.
Oh, okay. They're an interpreter in Hamas. Because I'm
Yeah.
imagining with the way you said it, I just pictured like, okay, an American diplomat goes and tries to hear what Hamas is saying or something. Okay.
No. Like they're working with Hamas. They're regularly putting out social media. They're just their Arabic to English translator that they use for it.
Like I suppose, but then in the same way, like I think I've heard the same arguments to justify like killing, like I mean, especially in this Elias situation where it's like, look, these are bureaucrats that are facilitating some sort of Israeli agenda, which may or may not be something that actually helps Gazan people. However, they are part of a system that does support the Israeli state. Are they part of the IDF? Are they part of the terrorist state of Israel, as some would call it? Like, it does get a little ambiguous, or really ambiguous there, not a little.
It does. It does, right? This is why I think we have things like reasonable belief standards in courts. Is that
Right.
like anytime you're starting to talk about like these more ambiguated things, like even like large portions of sexual assault is a lot more ambiguated, right? If two
Yeah.
people are both drunk,
Right.
she claims she didn't consent and he believes that she did, that's a lot murkier. And now there has to be like a certain burden of evidence to like claim that this person is doing things. And so like I'm not saying that my idea that like Nick Fuentes is at all times in a state of provocation and therefore assaults against him have that like justifiable defense. Not to get off with the assault, but to like vastly lessen the crime.
Yeah.
That might not be a good idea. I'm open to other ideas. Like, for example, I think there should be way more lawsuits between YouTubers so that they can like target each other and make some level of precedent of how you can and cannot talk about one another. Like, I think the Ethan Klein thing is a really good example of like serial harassment online. I think that everything that's
In
been
which
done to his
direction?
family, the CPS calling, the skulls,
Oh,
the
okay.
people mocking and laughing at, the people like encouraging it. I think there is some level of plausibility. Like I think him suing Noah Samson, probably good. I hope he wins, right? So I think there should be some level of like stochastic terrorism, maybe like civil liability. The issue is like, I don't know how to solve it perfectly. Wick is screaming, I think it's a bad idea. Less litigation, please. Maybe I need to debate Kyla. The issue is that like Wick A is very anti-violence, and I'm not as anti-violence.
Yeah.
And B, I just don't think talking about it is solving. I'm open to talking about it too. I'm not
Right.
saying deplatform
It's not
them.
enough.
Like that's where you and I differ. Like I think it is fine for somebody like Destiny to debate Nick Fuentes because I think Destiny can handle those debates and do well in it, right?
Yeah, but again, that's
issue is
buried in there is that because he can. But what if they can't? And now you've got Nick Fuentes debating some dumbass like
And
Jubilee kid, right?
Optically, for like the war of winning our ideas, it's bad. I just don't think it's a moral. Like Xander Hall wasn't morally bad for talking to
No,
Lawrence
no.
Southern.
But it's
losing.
yeah, it's ultimately bad for our cause when we let more of that happen.
Yeah, but failing your cause isn't like an immoral thing, which is why like I'm not opposed to people platforming basically anyone at a moral level. I also agree that you probably shouldn't treat these things as like equal ideas. maybe there should be some level of calling. I don't know, like, should there be journalistic standards erected on content creators? Because damn, those extreme ideas do really well for content, like
Yeah.
really well for content. But the more that you bring them on, the more people like, you know, that Andrew Wilson guy's got a point about women voting. They do vote blue a lot, right? And
I
it's
have
like,
a
okay, well,
close friend who is like adamantly Andrew Wilson fan who's he's like telling me, yeah, I don't think women should vote until they at least get rid of the draft. It's unequal. And like he would not believe that we're not for Andrew Wilson to have a larger platform, which I think is in part to people platforming him to get that big. You know, like I guess there's a difference between saying these people need to not exist, like we should deplatform them or legally deal with them, and saying is incumbent, we have a responsibility, people with a bigger platform, which it's weird to say that out loud because I never thought I'd be here, but like I'm not going to just have these people on when it's very clearly like I don't that is tacitly implying there's an equivalence between these two ideas. If I host the should women vote panel, it's saying, okay, well, this is what 50-50 of the opinions are, not, hey, 90% of the people are actually talking about something completely over to window left, and now I'm bringing in this fringe person because it is better viewage, because it is ridiculous. Most people hate it, but it will convert a non-zero amount of people to saying, wait a minute, that guy's got a point. Maybe women shouldn't vote. And like, isn't that
sure,
now
it'll
on
also
me for
convert.
hosting him?
It'll also convert. The issue with the pipeline argument is like the pipeline has to go both ways. Like why would it only go one way? Right. So as many people who might watch that and be like, you know, I debated Jay Dyer. There's probably a lot of people that are like, this is why women shouldn't vote. Look at this stupid bitch. Also had a mass growth of new followers that are engaging with my content and increasingly like slightly de-radicalizing as a result. Right. So like
Yeah.
the pipelines go both ways. And I think like in the question of like treating them as like 50-50, maybe it's doing that. I'm not sure what I think about that, but the issue is not engaging with it at all isn't dealing with the problem, unless we're just going to hope and assume that all the silicon owners and owners of the social media platforms will hopefully just be left, right? It's
Right.
like these ideas aren't going to die. They've existed for a long time. If we want to like bludgeon them to death, we have to find a way to actually bludgeon them to death. One of the ways we should probably bludgeon them to death, by the way, is botting, right? I know for a fact that Jay Dyer is botting, unquestionably, right?
Yeah.
So he looks way more popular, and people are compelled by this. People are like, I don't know, that was pretty stupid. And then they'll like look at the comments and be like, oh, but so many people think that that was like kind of based. So like maybe it is based.
I
Right?
was going to
People are
ask
very much
Rokana this. I was like, look, the right wing has been lying so much. Should we just start lying? Should we just start making shit up? Because I don't know. It might be a race to the bottom, but there is like some credence to what you're saying. Yeah, like I guess my issue is, yes, you're seeing growth, they're seeing growth. But when you said like, oh, these ideas have existed for a while, we need to bludgeon them to death. I don't see that happening in this debate space. I mean, I've been watching these Twitch people and these YouTube people since like 2016-ish, and they've only gotten bigger, no matter how many times they're, Destiny destroys Nick Fuentes or Vosh destroys Andrew Wilson. Like, they don't get smaller. They are getting bigger. And the biggest surge that I've seen is one, Trump getting elected, and two, like you said, Elon Musk buying Twitter. That has made white supremacy, racism, all these things more palatable. That was replatforming. So all I guess this, again, this isn't borne out in a study, but if I can show the exact empirical number by which these people have grown is a replatforming, why not deplatform?
I think it just doesn't solve the problem. I think
it doesn't solve. But
it just goes underground. It like builds power, right? Like Andrew Wilson had like less than 30 viewers for I think 6 years before he blew up, right?
But why
And the
did he
reason
blow up?
blew up,
Yeah.
he blew up because he went on the whatever panel and was willing to play ball with like shitting on women, not because of his like Eastern Orthodox. In fact, he's pretty intentional when he debates. Like, say what you want about Andrew Wilson, that is a smart motherfucker, right? And also, he doesn't get destroyed in debate a lot of the time. I agree that he doesn't do good debates. Like, I think he's oftentimes like not the best faith, right? And a lot of his like the people that debate like him, but the left doesn't know how to deal with that at all. The left doesn't know how to debate in any way, shape, or form. I have a feeling like it's crazy. The pickle jar might have been more disastrous for him than anything, because there is this level of optics. This is something that Destiny was super good at, where he genuinely made the gaming right side shift left in Twitch, because he debated JonTron and he debated all these big gamers over and over and over again and made them look really, really stupid, right? And so I think in many ways, this is how the young earth basically died out. There are some fringe people who think about it, and it's possible that some great debater who's a young earther will catch steam again. And then we do have to engage with it. We do have to talk to it. And the idea that I feel like, oh man, this really good debater who's young earth is coming up, you know, what do we do about him? Ignore him? It's like, it's probably not a good idea. It's just probably not.
Okay, I think there's a compromise here where, yeah, I don't think we should completely deplatform all these people, and especially, like I said, if they're already at this level, you can't just like walk away from it. I think this is kind of what Hasan does, right? He's like, I don't think other than the Ethan thing, does he really debate anyone that disagrees with him? He doesn't really do debates anymore. Like, I think that's...
No.
Yeah, like all that does is just say, okay, let's everyone stick in your little bubble, and the people who are engaging are going to grow their platforms and get these bigger people. And actually, I guess he's been growing his platform with liberals thanks to the liberal media being like, hey, here's the Joe Rogan to the left. Yep. But if it is a small guy, if it is like a 5 subscriber, hey, I'm a young earth debater and maybe some people like him, yeah, fuck him, don't platform him. But if it's so big that you can't ignore it, then don't ignore it. I guess that's kind of where I'm at. And you don't need, any private institution is always going to just deplatform what makes them the most money. So I can't really advocate for that in any way, shape, or form. The Whatever podcast probably platformed Andrew because they knew, hey, this guy's going to make these, dumb bimbos look dumb, and I'll make super chats. So I've seen like the super chats on those things, and I get it. So yeah, my position is not like just get rid of these people completely, especially when they're so big to ignore, but don't platform people that don't have a platform 100%. And also, like, yes, we do need to be up to date and be able to emasculate and make these ideas look dumb regardless, because they're not going away. I agree with that at the very least. The problem is when you say we need to bludgeon these ideas out of existence, I don't see that happening at all. I see the complete opposite. And the only last time we had to defeat Nazis literally was like a violent, World War II. So like, I just don't want it to get to that level where it's just...
I also would like to avoid violence. The issue is that the left is so fucking desperately pathetic and has no spine and full of cowards that like the reality is that I literally watched Dean Withers basically almost blew up 2 separate tours because of microaggressions, and I can't even remember the other one at this point, right? This
what happened there? Now, like what was I actually don't know the story.
He was going to be on Unfuck America. Somebody felt that there was not enough, there's something about Black people not getting paid or something, and it wasn't even true. And then Z, the coordinator, went on to respond to it, and then she was accused of microaggressions, and he was like, look, I can't have anything to do with microaggressions, right? But the Democrats keep going to Dean Withers and being like, this guy will reach young people. And it's like, he's reaching young women and people who already vote for you. He's not reaching anyone useful. Like, he's fucking useless, right? And he's cowardly. It is fucking pathetic that the left has been so consumed with optics that we just forgot about having principles. And so the right has had some very effective debaters like Andrew Wilson and Steven Crowder, unfortunately, come in and attack us because we got fat and lazy, because we just kicked everyone out and then went, we won. And it's like, we didn't win. They went back, got better and stronger, and then the really good ones came up because the ideas never died. There was just a lot more resentment. They're a lot more willing to play even more dirty because they hate us for like kicking them off at the platforms, which is just like, now we're in this situation where, yeah, not many people can dumpster Andrew Wilson because he's really good at what he does, right?
Well, he'll never admit defeat regardless. Is like that's one of those, like, optic wise, like that's why I think the pickle jar thing works so well, is because he is someone who is so caught up in his masculinity that he's never ever, like, I think he spent like the last like 8 minutes of his closing in our debate just declaring victory, not even like really explaining why, just like, and I won because of this and because of this, and it's like, all right, like, you didn't have to, I didn't have to do that. And it's like, because I thought the merits of my argument work, but you are like, will never back down from a point. You will never concede that point. And even when I gave him like the good faith of like, hey, like, I'm glad that you admitted that, like, yeah, in times of war, women do need to work because the men are off fighting. And he's like, well, actually, and then like, he wouldn't even concede that, even though he conceded it earlier. Cause as soon as it was oh, you're putting me on the back foot. So like, I don't know if that's, I mean, that's good optically for the people that already agree with him, but like, that's something you can never win with if they're never going to even concede. And that's kind of what I saw with Misfit. Is he not is he in that same circle? Is he not a repeal the 19th person?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know much about Misfit.
Well, someone in my chat said he
But
was like a repeal the 19th person, so I don't know.
I
But
think one of the issues that we have to bear in mind is that I think, especially because a lot of us in the debate space on the left probably grew up on like the intellectualism of like Christopher Hitchens.
yeah,
And so we grew up being like, oh my gosh, facts, logic, and good thinking. I love that shit. But the issue is that like postmodernism beat the skeptics. The progressives beat the skeptics over trans shit because the skeptics were like, trans people are kind of gross, kind of weird, right? And the progressives were like, why are you so mean? And then suddenly everything changed to like in a completely different game, which is like the optics game, right? And so I think what has to happen is that you have to be aware that when you're talking about debate in a public platforming space, you're not just talking about like the true beautiful art of two intellectually honest people who are epistemically humble, battling the will of ideas together to find truth in like an Aristotelian friendship of virtue way. That's not what's happening anymore to any degree. There's a lot more optics going on. And I think that there's got to be a way that we can learn how to like update our style and skill to manage that while also purporting ideas that are better. Because here's one pro tip: it's a lot easier to be optically strong if your idea is right, because it's a lot easier to defend, right? You just need to know how to defend it.
yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, the funny thing is, I'm not even really disagreeing with anything you've said so far in this conversation. Insofar as like, I'm a person who advocates for more debate, like with these people. I'm trying to go into these spaces. I do try to like measure, like, okay, how much of this is me just telling you what is empirically true, and also making you look dumb. But yeah, I'm not disagreeing with any of that. Obviously, that needs to happen insofar as short term, like that's the only way you win these people over. I just see like long term, it's like, does this inevitably come with us on top, even if we are better at it? Because I do think we were better at it for 4 or 5 years, and then it
I
just came
think we have
back.
the right ideas, and I think the left is the master of the arts. So I think if we can, like, I genuinely think that if we can get behind something, we can get a coherent worldview that actually fucking makes sense, right? Like is defendable, right? Like, I don't know what we get behind. Maybe the abundance movement is something we get behind, and then we fall back to like some basic liberal principles, right? Like the things I fall back to is like free speech. I'm very big on freedoms, just generally, right? I'm very big on strong institutions, not big institutions, strong ones, and I'm really, really big on the welfare state. I think these things really matter. I think there's really, really good moral and logical arguments for them, and we figure out how to make these arguments. And until we like refine this art, we're just going to keep losing. And unfortunately, what's happening on the left is we just like appeal to our own base, and then our base likes us, and we're like, "Heh, see, we're winning." And it's like, are you though?
Yeah. Well, also all the people
Yeah.
that do finally do reach causality to stop getting canceled. So that'd be cool.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I have to get going though. I have another thing to get to, but it was nice.
Oh, what thing? Yeah, no, likewise. Nice to meet you. Where are you going to? I don't know if I should redirect some people there because I have a 45-minute gap. Maybe they can watch while they're...
If they want to see some really hot cosplay girls talk about D&D, that's what I'm
Don't
gonna
go to that,
redirect.
guys. In fact, blacklist it from all of your browsers. Okay, thanks so much for talking, Kyla. I appreciate the conversation. I'll see you later. Have fun.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.